Let me feel your love again.
Yo, what is going on, Papa Fam? Welcome back to another banger of a video. Today we're going to be building out the Next.js 13 blog with Sanity version 3. That's two pieces of cutting edge tech right now. They literally released within the space of a month. Sanity v3 within the space of a couple of days. So this is one of the first most intrusive tech builds I have done for new bits of tech. So get excited. Let me know where you're watching from right now. And as always, guys, enjoy this video. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're building today. The Next.js 13 blog with Sanity version 3. Check this out. Sunny's daily blog. This is it, guys. We've got a fully responsive website right now. Welcome to everyone in the chat. I can see everyone popping off right now. This is awesome. What is going on, guys? So right now I'm going to show you the fully responsive blog we have right here. We've got Sunny's daily blog. You can go ahead and scroll down. And this is all using the latest and greatest from Next.js. So let's go ahead and click into Sanity Studio version 3. We're going to click into that right now. You can see bam. And guys, bear in mind, that was instant. That was a static page, right? So let's go ahead and check this out. We can go ahead and go down to our article. You can see all the great stuff that is released in Sanity Studio version 3. And guys, just to mention, this is all powered by a Sanity CMS backend. So this is what I'm excited to show you now. I have never ever done this before on a build because it wasn't possible. Sanity recently released this within a couple of days ago, and I want to go ahead and show you guys first. So as you can see, this is not on a custom Sanity URL. This is actually part of the Next.js app, which means it's now an embedded studio, which is crazy. We have so much power to customize it, do whatever we want with it. Look at the color scheme I've gone for. I've gone for a nice sort of dark theme right here. I've added my own custom navbar header. And what's even more cooler, guys, is that something I've never done on a build before is now possible. If I go ahead and split the pane and I go ahead and add in the preview option over here. So I've added this custom field in. Check this out, guys. I get a preview mode enabled, which I'm going to show you how to enable. And then let's go down to the Sanity blog right here, right? So Sanity Studio v3. Now check this out. As I go ahead and update the information on here, look at that, guys. It goes ahead and shows me a preview in real time. This is streaming using a bunch of cool tech right now. It's using a bunch of powerful things from Sanity. It's using the new Next.js 13 server components. And this allows us to get a nice preview before we publish that information. And now on the actual website, how we can do the exact same thing. Let's go to the local host for the home page. If I go to /API/preview, it now puts my app into preview mode and it loads up the preview data. This means it's going to pull in all the Sanity information from my backend, even if I haven't published it. So this is great for if you want to go ahead and have, that careful control over reviewing content before it is live on the actual website. Now, it's worth mentioning that all the blog posts are using really efficient optimal rendering techniques, such as the new GenerateStaticParams, which is a replacement for ISR in Next.js 13. I'm going to teach you what all of that jargon means, so don't stress. We've got a lot of good stuff coming. I can see so many people tuning in. We have India, France, Ghana, Haiti, Senegal, Greece, UK, USA, Spain. This is what I'm talking about, guys. Welcome to the Papa Fam. And yeah, this is going to be one hell of a build. Now, I just want to mention a couple of things before we dive into this build. A few things about the tech stack right now. We are going to be using Next.js 13, as I mentioned a couple of times. This is a framework for React. And then we're going to be powering up the entire backend with Sanity's amazing content platform. Now, when it comes time to use Sanity, make sure you use the first link in the description, because we are going to be giving you literally double the amount of free quota. So they've hooked us up. Go to sanity.io/Sunny, and you're going to get access to this right here, which is a special command which allows you to go ahead and redeem pretty much double all of the free monthly usage. So we've doubled everything. We've got a nice little thing going on with Sanity right now. The team are incredible. So make sure you do this to get all of that free good stuff. Now, we are going to be diving into Sanity version 3, which, as I mentioned before, was literally released days ago. So right now it's not even been out for longer than a week. So this is literally breaking cutting edge new stuff. They've got full TypeScript coverage right now. They've got an incredible developer experience, which you're going to see today for yourself. It's a lot nicer to code with now. They have global search and content filters. It's amazing for the content creators as well, because imagine you as a developer have one job, but actually uploading the content and managing all of that can be completely delegated to someone else. This allows all of that to happen very easily. So a massive amount of use in this case. We've got workspaces to go ahead and separate different areas of the company, different you can have different countries, all that kind of good stuff. And as I mentioned before, we can embed the studio into our own website and customize it however we want. They actually have a really good migration guide. So if you are looking at any of my old tutorials, make sure you check out the description. We have got a nice little guide on how you can upgrade some of my old code, which is V2, over to V3. And don't be scared. No, those tutorials aren't outdated. You can go ahead and use the migration guides to go ahead and level up your stuff. So do not stress, guys. We've got you covered over at the Papa Fam, right? And if you haven't already and you want to go ahead and support myself and the guys over at Sanity, make sure you go ahead and head over to the product hunt page, Sanity Studio version 3. Give them an upvote, guys. These guys deserve it. It's absolutely incredibly powerful of a platform, and you're going to see just how powerful it is when we go ahead and implement all of this today. And guys, trust me, it's so much easier than you think, okay? Just follow my steps, enjoy the video. It's all going to be up on YouTube afterwards. Don't stress, right? For now, we're going to go ahead and dive into it. Now, as I mentioned before, if you find any of this too tricky or is too over the top and it kind of gets a little bit too intimidating, check out our course over at papareact.com. Link is also in the description. We've got our course, Zero to Full Stack Hero, full community where we go ahead and help you go from zero skill set all the way up to getting your first developer job and helping you after that. We've got over 750 students right now, absolutely killing it, absolutely loving it. Weekly coaching, that's all over at papareact.com. And I'm excited, if you haven't already joined us over at the University of Code, make sure you check it out. They're literally getting daily emails, coding challenges sent to your email inbox. So every day, you just check your inbox, you get a nice little coding challenge, and then the day after, you get the solution to that challenge. Trust me, by far the most effective thing I found for our students. So check out the University of Code. So those two things said, let's dive into today's video. Get excited, get ready. This is going to be a big one. Make sure you go ahead and have your water nearby. It's going to be a lot of fun. So as I mentioned before, TypeScript is going to be used in this. We've got Tailwind CSS. We've got the GROQ query language to go ahead and pull this all in. We have embedded at the /studio. So I'm going to show you how to do that with Next.js 13. And we're going to go ahead and finally deploy this to Vercel. So that way you have a live production app, which also allows everything to happen. Now it's worth mentioning, when we do have the /studio route, this actually uses Sanity's authentication. So you can't just go into the studio and use it willy-nilly. You have to go ahead and sign into an account, which you've gone ahead and authorized. And you can add different users, add different members to go ahead and change information and so forth. In this case, I'm already logged in. So as you can see, this is protected. Otherwise, you'll get a nice little login pop-up, and it's also protected by CORS origin requests. So tons of stuff, okay? Tons and tons of stuff. Trust me when I say this is something that you're gonna wanna watch back a couple of times, okay? So we're gonna dive into this right now, and I'm gonna show you how the hell to do everything I just said, okay? So smash the thumbs up button if you're excited about this one. And a lot of you are asking if it's recorded. No, this is absolutely live, but the video is going up on YouTube straight after we are done here today. So first things first, let's dive in. We're going to go ahead, and actually I've got loads of new music now on the Papa Fam playlist. Again, that's in the description as well. And I love this one. This one, everyone was asking for this song, where the song was from. But to get started off, we're going to go to tailwindcss.com, and we're going to head to the Next.js guides. And I like to use this command right here. Okay. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and set up our project. So open up a terminal. Time to get into some flow state. Okay. I'm going to open up a terminal. Oops, I've actually already done that. Nice. And at this point, we are going to go ahead and do, I like to go into my documents, builds, and I always do that because honestly, I want to show you, don't just randomly install stuff everywhere, right? Have a nice folder structure. It will help you out a lot in the long term. Then you're going to paste that command in that you saw earlier, npx create next app. If you haven't got npx, you need to install Node. Very easy to do. Simply Google Node. There's tons of instructions. And we're going to be using the template with Tailwind CSS. Okay. So the template with Tailwind CSS. Now for the name, I want to change this. I'm going to say something like Sanity version 3, blog Next.js 13. You can call it whatever you want. There's no right or wrong here. I'm just going to chuck it into that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit enter. Now, sometimes you might get prompted if you want to install dependencies. In this case, I didn't. It just went ahead and did it. But if it does ask you, just simply hit the enter key. Okay, now I'm going to dive into some of the characteristics of this build. In this build, we have got a bunch of different things going on. We've got these nice hero icons to handle the icons. We've also got these beautiful animations, right? Now, if you've never ever done anything like this, and you've never, experienced how to build a responsive website, this is actually a great project for you to start on. As you can see, no matter what size the page is, the entire app is moving around and changing as it's needed, right? So this is something that I'd highly recommend you follow from a beginner absolute starting standpoint, so that way all your websites can work on phones, websites, tablets, whatever it is, your website is responsive. Okay, so once that's done, we're going to go ahead and do cd sanity version 3 a blog, and I'm going to do mine Next.js 13. There we go. So that's what I called it. You can call it something else, call it whatever you want, and I'm going to type in code dot. Now, if you don't have the code command, then all you need to simply do is open up your VS Code, Command-Shift-P, and type in install. At this point, if you'll see install code command in path, mine says code insiders because I'm using a beta version. You will see code. Once you do that, you'll get that code command. If you can't do that, simply press Command O or simply hit open and go to the folder where you installed your files. Okay, so this is our home directory. Now, as I mentioned, we are using Next.js 13, but all of these templates tend to start off with Next.js 12, and then what they've allowed us to do is have this incremental approach. So we don't have to just take it all on hands-on. We can go ahead and adopt Next.js 13 as we like to. All right, thank you so much for the first donation. Vetri with that beautiful donation goes, thank you, Sonny, for teaching me Next.js and Tailwind. I recently won an internship and even won a blockchain hackathon. Oh my god, sorry, I choked on. Yeah, that's amazing, dude. Your builds are fire. That's awesome. I'm gonna have a quick water break. I don't know what that was. Jay, screenshot that. That's actually incredible, and well done for that, winning the hackathon, dude. That's incredible. Already flying past the hundreds of likes. That is what I'm talking about, guys. Amazing, amazing stuff. Okay, let's dive into this. So we've got the pages folder. This is the traditional way that we would go ahead and build out our apps with Next.js. Okay, so instead of this, I want to go ahead and change this to an app folder now. So previously, if I put a search.tsx file, that would correlate to /search on my website. This case, I want to get rid of this. I want to, instead of doing all of this, so we're going to run this app just to show you. I'm going to do yarn dev. If you have npm, you can do npm run dev and so forth. And then in this case, I'm going to move my code over to another screen, and I'm actually going to open up another browser over there, so that way we can have a nice little setup. Okay, I'm going to do localhost 3000. And as you can see now, guys, we've got the daily blog, which I need to cancel my old blog. Let me cancel that one. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this server and run it again. Let me do it again. So yarn dev, there we are. Okay. And here we are. So now what we can do is, and somebody said, I'm relatively new to Next.js. Would you recommend learning V12 before V13? No, it's completely your call, honestly. They're all, as I mentioned, is incrementally adoptable. So whatever you're using in Next.js 12 is not going to go to waste. The theory remains the same, but if you're coming in from a new standpoint, it's probably just best just to kind of jump into the 13 route, or relative, you can do both. You can do both, that's the truth. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to refresh. Now what you should see is welcome to Next.js. This is your starting point. Great. Now at this point, we want to remove that down to Command J, and I'm going to go ahead and literally delete this file because we're not going to use this anymore. Okay, and now we can even delete the app.tsx file because we don't need that either. Okay, all we need is the API afterwards, which we're going to be using. Now on the level where we have the next config, we're going to create a new folder called app. This is the new app directory for Next.js 13. We're going to create a new file in there called page.tsx. Now, once we've got that set up, I'm going to make my screen a little bit bigger to help you guys out. We're going to go back into Next.js and next config, and here we're going to enable the experimental app directory flag. This allows us to use the new app directory while it's in beta. Okay, and don't worry, at some point this will just get updated and you won't have to do this anymore, but for now we have to do that. I'm going to hit Command J. Now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and RFCE. Oh, I haven't got my snippets. Oh, that's annoying. So I get this weird problem lately where I can't do my snippets. So instead, we're just going to create our functional components. We're going to say export default, and we're going to call this one function page. And this is going to be resemblant of our home page. Okay, so this is just going to be a page with some content on it. Okay, now this one I'm going to say home page right there. And then what I want to do is we change the next config. So I need to cut my server with Control-C and do yarn dev once more. Okay. Now, this is amazing. We've got loads of viewers tuning in from all around the world. So we're going to click allow for the TypeScript. And now what we'll see is when I go to this page, pay attention. Look what it did. It found that we didn't have a root layout, and it created an app layout TSX for us. Now, in Next.js 13, we have these beautiful new files, and these are all reserved file key names. Page.tsx resembles the page itself. The layout resembles the overall layout of itself. Now we actually have, instead of the head here, we have a new head.tsx component, which allows us to customize anything that we want to put in the head. So here we can say the blog. And now, as you can see, if I refresh the page, the header gets injected with the blog title. Okay, so this is looking pretty good so far. Now, as you can see, this does not look like Tailwind CSS. That's because we need to import it into our new layout.tsx file. So heading over to styles, and this is what we need to import, global.css. So at the top of my layout file, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to say import, and now I want to go ahead and say styles/globals CSS. And at that point, what we should see is our Tailwind CSS kick into gear. That's where we want to be. So this is a good starting point right now. Okay. Now, first things first is we want to go ahead and just say, welcome to the blog, welcome to the blog. And what I like to do here is just sanity check yourself by saying text for Excel, something along the lines like that, and then refresh. Right? And then what you're going to find is with the new server component, sometimes the hot reloading doesn't work as expected. So you just have to do a little refresh. Doesn't mean it's broken. Okay. So, hey guys, I see everyone tuning in the chat. I'm not ignoring you. You're absolutely incredible. Thank you for tuning in. Okay. So first thing that we're going to do now is set up Sanity on the back end. So as you can see right here, we've got a starting point for our app. Now this is going to be the home page, and then we're going to have different directories, different things around right now. So eventually we're going to have a /studio and so forth on our app, on our website. Okay, so eventually the goal is to get to this level where we look something like this, where I can go to the website, I can go to the studio, and it's all going to be hosted on a Vercel URL. So first things first, I need to actually set up the, as I mentioned, I need to go ahead. Oh, Mr. Frank, what is up? Because this blog and the news app are so fire. Let's go. What's up? Papa Fam special tier member Frank, OG of the Papa Fam. Welcome back, dude. Right. So at this point now, I want to create another terminal. So I've still got my first one running with the server inside of it. And I'm going to use our special command. Okay, so there is a special command in order to go ahead and get the benefits of all of the free stuff that Sanity give you. So in this case, if you have forgotten what that is, just simply head over to sanity.io/sunny, and the command will be right here. So you're going to copy this command. Even if you're using yarn, you still want to use this one, as this is going to be for setting up Sanity. Okay, then we're going to go back over here and we're simply going to paste it in. Okay, now I want you to pay attention to all of my steps here. What this will do is it will create a folder for us called Sanity, or whatever we decide to call it, and inside of that it will have a studio which will have its own dependencies. What I'm then going to do is remove it from its original enclosure, so that is part of my app. So this is the kind of shortcut that I found works really quick for me, and it's something that I like to show you guys. So I don't do it the orthodox way. I like to do it a little bit of a hacky-tacky way, but it's kind of it's way easier this way, I found. Okay, so at this point we hit enter, npm create sanity latest with the coupon code sunny2022. Okay, now as you can see here, I've already got an account. If you didn't have an account, or if this didn't work, you may have to install the Sanity CLI. So simply Google Sanity CLI and it will go ahead and give you a little bit of help right there. Okay, so at this point we've done that, and if you aren't logged in, it will ask you to log in as well. I am already logged in. So the project name in this example, let's go ahead and give it a name, and let's just call this one Next.js 13 Sanity blog. Hit enter. Now, with that done, it's going to prompt us another question. The second question is, what do you want to use for the default data set? I'm just going to use the default, so hit enter for yes, which is the production data set. That'll create our first data set on the site. You can have different, staging, production, and so forth, different ones. Project output path. We're just going to hit enter in this case. And then we're going to, at this point, we get asked if we want to use one of the templates available to us. We are going to be using the blog schema template in order to set up our blog today. So we're going to go down with the arrow keys, hit enter. And then for TypeScript, we're going to hit Y for yes, we want to be using TypeScript, because TypeScript allows us to reduce the overall number of bugs in our app. Now, as you can see here, it says which dependency manager do you want to use? We're using Yarn today. And then it's going to go ahead and install the dependencies. As I mentioned, there's going to be a few things that will change here. Okay, so just let this install. And then once this is done, we can proceed with rearranging things. So that way we have it embedded, because right now this is doing it in a way that it's going to be a separate app. But I'm going to show you my little hacky trick as to how we can go ahead and take it from a separate app into our own and embed it really nicely on our own route, for example, /studio. Okay, so let's go ahead and wait for that to get down. And in the meantime, we can go ahead and have a look at some of the things that we're going to be needing to do. So first up, we are going to need to install something called Next Sanity. So while this is happening, we are going to be needing this dependency called Next Sanity. So we simply head over to the npm package Next Sanity. And this is going to be used for basically connecting everything that we need from our Sanity backend to our Next.js front end. Okay, so we're going to copy that, head back over here. And once this is done, we will go ahead and run this command as well. So just let that finish this thing. Now, as you can see, they've got a bunch of different things which allow us to help us to get set up. So what I'm going to be doing is fast forwarding a portion of this, and I want to show you where I got the information from. So that way you can do your own research if you have any questions or anything like that. So check this out. So if you go down here, we've got a bunch of really nice instructions actually. So if we go to the Next Sanity preview, it actually shows us how to do everything that we're going to be soon doing for how to set up the preview environment. But in this case, I'm going to show you just a very simple follow me route. Okay, so now that that's done, so that's finished, really nice. We're now going to go ahead and add Next Sanity to our application as well. Okay, so once this is down, we can see now, if we inspect our folders, we should now see that we have a Sanity. Let's go ahead and have a look. We've got the Next.js Sanity blog folder. As you can see, this has its own node modules outside of ours. So this is where you have to pay very careful attention, okay? So that you can easily make a mistake at this point, because there's a few little intricate parts I need you to understand. Firstly, what I want you to do is go to your package.json on the outer level, pop that, so Command J hide that, pop that on the left-hand side of your editor. Go to the package.json on the right-hand side, pop that on the right-hand side of your editor. These are the dependencies for my Next.js project. These are the dependencies for the Sanity project. All I'm going to do is I'm going to embed it into my own. So I'm going to take the Sanity Vision dependency, copy that, and I'm going to do a paste over here. So I've got the Sanity Vision dependency. I also want the Sanity dependency, and I also want styled components. So I'm going to pop those over as well. And then I'm going to take the Sanity ESLint config studio in the dev dependencies, and I'm going to pop that here as well. And that is everything that we need out of here, right? So you can simply get rid of that, save your main package.json file. Okay, so now we're going to make this back to full screen, and trust me, this makes sense as to what we're going to be doing here. Now all I need you to do is type in yarn or npm I to install the new dependencies that we added. So this will install Sanity, styled components, all of that stuff that we could see previously. Okay, now once that's done, what we're going to be doing is essentially we don't need this folder, so we have to actually get rid of that folder. So I'm going to remove some of these things. The first thing I'm going to change is grab the schemas, and I'm going to take that out to the top level package.json level. I'm going to move that outside of here. Okay, and we're going to click update imports. Yes, that's fine. And then we're going to take the Sanity CLI, the Sanity config, okay, and we're going to take those as well outside. So we're going to take that to the package.json level. Then what we can see is we've got the static file, which we don't need. We've got node modules and all this other stuff. Now at this point, I don't need anything. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that overall upper folder. So we have actually reduced a lot of the headache right now. Okay, so we're deleting that right now, and don't know why it takes long when I'm on live, but we're going to let that do its thing. So that's going to get rid of this file. We don't need that one. So at this point now, we've got a new higher level of looking at things. Okay, so we've got our schema types. That shouldn't be erroring out. That should be completely fine actually. So we've got our schema. Let's go ahead and just double check a few things. Yep. So at this point now, schema types from, oops. I'm going to go into my Sanity config. And what we need to do in here, oh yeah, that's right. It's because we have to go to the same level. That's it. So you just want to update any failed dependency in imports. Okay. So now what we've done is so JM Ninja asked a question as to what I just did there. So what we did is I took two separate projects and I essentially merged it. So what I did was I took the Sanity Studio, which was a separate project, and I've now brought it and embedded it into my own app. This is the easiest way that I found to do it, right? So, I mean, there are loads of tutorials online, but I personally have my own way of doing things. This is the way I recommend it because it's super quick once you know how to do it. Okay, so at this point, we've got the project ID, the data set, and all this good stuff. We shouldn't really have it like this. So what I'm now going to ask you to do is go ahead and do the following. So I want you to now create an environment file. So environment.local. Okay, and we're simply going to have three values inside. We're going to have next public sanity project ID, next public sanity dataset, next public sanity API version. Okay, now in this case, I'm going to use a few separate values here. So the first one I'm going to use is 2022-11-15 for the Sanity API version. For the dataset, I am going to be using production, and then I'm going to paste in my project ID. Now in this case, you will have your project ID here. Okay, so in this case, you've already seen mine, so I'm just going to pop it in as well. So I'm going to go into here, I'm going to paste it in. Now these are all next public values because we don't mind if these get exposed. No one can do harm from just having access to this. So we're going to hit save right now. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to close that file and I'm going to go into my Sanity config, and I want to change this a little bit more so that way we follow a bit of a nicer structure. Okay, so first things first is I'm going to import my dependencies at the top, my new environment variables, the project ID and the data set. The second thing I need to do is I need to add something called a base path. Now the base path is essentially where I'm going to render it on our website. So in this case, I'm going to have the base path like so. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the project ID and data set. Actually, what we can do here instead is you can just get rid of the value. And this is going to go ahead and default to our environment variable value instead. Right? And then we're going to move around a few things. So for the name, we're going to call this one the PapaFam Content Studio with underscores, right? And it takes the underscore and it replaces it with a space afterwards. So that's going to be the name. And then for the title, we're going to say the PapaFam Content Studio, because this is going to be where the studio lies over our /studio root. Okay, now once that's done, we've got our two plugins. This is the vision tool, which allows us to basically test out our GROQ queries on the backend. So in this case, if I was to show you that, the vision tool is simply, in this case, the vision right here. So this allows us to run GROQ queries. So this one, I just need to refresh it, and I've got this. Oh, I've closed it running. That's why. Let me go back to my deployed version, and we should be able to see an example of that in action. So if I go here to /studio, we should be able to see the vision tool there. So that will just allow us to go ahead and run GROQ queries. The desk tool allows us to basically update the information as we can see right here. So this is the desk plugin. The vision plugin was simply for the GROQ queries. Okay, so in this case, you can see I can run a GROQ query. GROQ is the query language we're going to be using to query the database over at Sanity. All right, so in this case, this is looking great right so far. And then we've got our schema types, which we're rendering in from over here. And these schema types essentially build up the structure and format for which our data will be inputted. So everything you're seeing in this regard, so the post itself, all of the different fields, all is fed through by the schema. So we have a different schema for the category, the block content, the author, and then the index file is where we combine it all together, and then we simply import that into our configuration file in sanityconfig.ts. Okay, so I hope that makes a lot of sense. Now we're not going to go too far into as to how we're going to go ahead and change any of the schema, because we're not going to change the schema. We're using the base template that they give us to go ahead and get things off the ground. Okay, so with that down, we are then going to set up our root, right? So in this case, we now need to go ahead and actually have, so even in this case for the Sanity CLI, I'd prefer to be using our configuration files instead. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull these in like so, get rid of this, and then over here as well, just like that. Now they do in fact update the server, but I like to restart my server when I've changed that many different things. So we're going to go ahead and restart it. Okay, then what I want you to do is make sure that when you refresh your page, you're still seeing this and you're not getting any errors. That's a good start. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to first embed the Sanity Studio on the back end, right? So the way we do this is we can actually see a lot of the instructions over at Next Sanity. So if we go here and head up to the table of contents, we can see Next Sanity Studio Dev Preview. So if I click onto this, it will show exactly how. So this is what we just did now, the config, the CLI. This is slightly different, but it's fine. And then this is how we need to go ahead and embed it, right? So inside of that page, we're going to go ahead and create the following routes now. So as you can see, this is where I get my examples from. I'm not making this stuff from thin air. It's coming straight from documentation. Okay, so we need to make this route right here. So studio/index/page. Now in the new Next.js 13 routing, this will resemble a root. Okay, so in this case, if I create a new file, I'm going to call it studio/index. This creates a folder called studio and a folder within it called index. I'm going to create a page.tsx inside of it, which will resemble my page inside of there. Okay, so this is going to be the page. In fact, we don't need a functional component here. Instead, now what we need is this example. So we're going to make it a client-side component in Next.js 13. So I'm going to copy that in, and I'm going to copy everything like so. Right, we're going to paste that in. Now, as you can see, this is pulling in from our Sanity configuration. We've got our Next Studio, which is going to go ahead and render the studio at this route. So this basically works in a way where we're essentially going to /studio, the index of that route, which is defined by this according to the studio backend. And then we're going to have the page itself. Now, that's not all. We're almost there, but we now need to go ahead and create a head file. Remember I said there's some reserved file names just for like the home page, head layout, and so forth. We're going to create a head.tsx as well. Okay, and over here it's very simple. All we have to do is take this, pop this in like so, and we can simply go ahead and customize that as we wish. Now I'm going to show you what I did in regards to mine and how you can go ahead and do the same thing. Okay, so at this point, if we pop that in, you can see you want to simply get rid of the default export. That's perfect. And then you've got the custom studio head. So this case, I'm going to leave it pretty much blank. The favy icons, everything itself, but you can customize the head, the title, all that good stuff. In fact, if you wanted to go ahead and say the PapaFam Studio, you can do that as well, right? Code with Guillaume. Hey, what's up, dude? Good to see you in the house. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hit save. And then after that, we're going to add a loading indicator. This just allows the overall experience to be better. The reason why we have to have a loading indicator here is because the loading portion is a client-side portion where we want to basically be loading on the client. Now, a lot of the time with Next.js 13, all of our components, well, by default, all of our components are server components. So we have to go ahead and tell it explicitly where it needs to use the client rendering. Okay, so in this case, we're going to be using the loading.tsx. And again, if you are confused at any of this Next.js 13 talk, make sure you check out the video. Probably be over here around the video after some point. Jay, hook it up, or Jay will pop it in the chat right now. And it's a video explaining all about Next.js 13 and those specific files that I'm talking about right now. So loading TSX, we're going to go ahead and pop this in right now and use our code snippet like so. Feel free to pause the video and copy that out if you need to. Okay, so with that set now, we should be in a position where we can test out our studio backend. So now let's go to localhost /studio and let's see what happens. Now, I already know what's gonna happen, but I wanna show you how we're gonna handle it. So at this point, we should be loading the studio up right now. So we're gonna go ahead and wait for it to load. And let's see what happens. So in this case, you can see we've got our loader. This is the loading.tsx file. And then you've got this. To access your content, you need to add the following URL as a cross-origin request, cause origin to your Sanity project. So they made it really easy. All we have to do is click continue. This will take us to the Sanity.io manage page. And at this point, you can see I'm at my page. And as you can see, you should have the boosted free plan if you use the Sunny coupon code. Okay, so the first link in the description to go ahead and get that. We're going to click on add cause origin. All right, and now you can see we basically have allowed it to go ahead and, you know, get this through. So this is the awesome part. This is where we have authentication. Now, you probably were wondering, well, the studio looks great and all, but what if somebody just went to /studio and they want to update all the information on my blog and they say, you know, I suddenly like coding in C++, right? Which is not true. But how do you protect against that? So here we have the Sanity authentication handling this for us. So in this case, you can see the PuppetFam Content Studio is here. We can go ahead and log in to an account that we have authorized beforehand. So Sanity, if we go to the sanity.io/manage, right? And we go to our project. So let's go ahead and see for ourselves. Here we've got the Next.js Sanity blog. You can see members right here. Now, as you can see, you can add in project members, right? And in this case, we've got an unlimited number of members that we can actually add. And at this point, they can then log in with the provider that you've set up. So if we go ahead and click Google, I'm going to log in to my account right now. So it's popped up with my Google prompt. I'm going to log into puppereact.team. And now, just like that, we should get access if I've been granted it. So this is perfect. This is what we wanted to see. And as you can see, guys, this is on our actual Next.js app. So this is localhost 3000/studio/desk, right? So literally we are at the studio, we are on our own Next.js app. This is amazing, right? This is really, really powerful. Don't underestimate this. So at this point, we can go ahead and create our posts, our authors, our categories, and so forth. So if I was to create a post now, you can go ahead and enter in all the information, all that good stuff, and it will come up here. Now, what I'm going to do now is I've already pre-populated this information. It spent a lot of time pre-populating it. You can go ahead and pre-populate it yourself just by simply going out and popping in a title, slug, for example, and then you can put in the author, main image, categories, and so forth, and then click publish, okay? But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna replace the project ID with the ID that I've already basically pre-populated the data for. So nothing will change in that regard. It's simply going to go ahead and allow us to basically get a shortcut into not having to pre-populate all the information again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to a different project ID right now. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this right now. I'm changing my project ID. I am restarting my application. And now on my website, you can see I have a pre-populated PuppetFam Content Studio up and running. Okay, so nothing else changed, just the data, because it's now connected to a different app. So in this case, you can see I've got all this information right here. So we've got, you know, the Sanity Studio. And again, at this point, you could have just paused and added in your own information, your categories, and so forth. And it's super easy to go ahead and do it. If there wasn't one available, you simply click on add. You can create a new one at that point. It pops it open. It's super easy. You create a new category, publish it, add it there, done. Right? But something to be careful of is try not to leave these empty like this. Right? If you have got this, make sure you remove it. So you've got a clean set, and then you click publish, done. Okay. So that's great. Now we've got our dummy data set up, we've got our Sanity backend embedded, and then we're ready to go ahead and hook the front end up. So now you can see we've got the front end and we've got a protected backend, right? All running on Next.js server components. Now tell me right now in the comments, isn't that damn powerful? Like, come on, that is damn powerful. We're gonna customize it as well to make it look really, really cool, right? So quick little water break before we carry on. And we're doing very, very good for timing as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and customize this to make this look a little bit nicer. So right now, I want it to look something like this. Now that looks a lot better, right? Where I've got my colors, my theming, rather than just this, right? This is a bit like meh. Right? I want it to look like that. Look at the difference between that and that. This has got branding behind it, right? The PuppetFam Content Studio, it's nicer. Now, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show you how to just go ahead and do that. So first things first, we need to go ahead and create a theme file, right? So the theme file, very, very simply, I'm just gonna go and pop this on the side. We'll close all my files. Head to package.json level. I'm just gonna create at the top level called theme.ts, right? And this is gonna need a few things from my Sanity dependencies. So I'm gonna need something from the build legacy theme, right? Now, in this case, what I've done is I've already got a few prompts, and I did get this from an example online, but I just customized it as I needed. So these are just CSS variables. My white correlates to a white, my black correlates to a slightly gray, because you shouldn't really be using like pure black, pure white. In this case, I'm using pure white, but gray is a lot more easier on your eye, contrasting. And that's why you notice VS Code isn't a black background, right? And then we've got the PuppetFam brand color, awesome stuff. And then red, yellow, green, okay, great. Then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and pop in my theming that I've gone ahead and set up beforehand. So I just need you to go ahead and have a look at the code that I've popped down now. So at this point, you can pause it. Feel free to write this out. Again, all the code that you see right here will be it's actually available on the Papa GitHub repo in the description. So you can feel free to check that out as well. Okay. And now you can see, look at this beautiful stuff, right? So this is going to basically correlate to the stuff that you're going to see over here. We just have to simply connect it, right? So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And simply what is happening here is it's using the props from here to go ahead and predefine those values. And so you can change your color theming up here and it will basically handle it accordingly. So at that point, you go to your Sanity config, and now we need to basically tell it to use that, okay? So I'm going to zoom back in again. So I'm going to say theme is my theme, and my theme, and this theme I'm going to import from the directory that we just created. Now as soon as I hit save, let's see what happens to the colors. Now we've got a nice little color scheme, right? So now you can see the colors are on par with what we did, right? So you can feel free to customize those colors, play around with it, you know, have a look and literally go as far as you want in that regard, right? So at that point, that's already looking a bit better. Right, we have the colors behind it. Now we want to customize these top elements. So I'm going to show you how to customize 2 of the components that we can customize. There are so many ways you can customize. You can literally change everything about this to make it completely bespoke, but I'm just going to go ahead and add in 2 things that I think are cool. One, I'm going to add in this custom logo component, and then I'm going to add in this top nav studio bar component. And again, remember, if you haven't already, check out the University of Code for daily coding problems and challenges, right? Given by yours truly, right? So check it out if you haven't already. So we're going to build this out, right? So pop in back over to our code. We're going to go and say studio, and then we're going to pass in an object. And then here, what we're going to say is if I press Control Spacebar, you can see I got components. And then inside of components, Control Spacebar allows us to see what we can replace, right? So this is some of the things we can replace. So in this case, I'm going to have a logo, which is going to eventually belong to a logo component that we're going to create. And then I'm going to have a nav bar, right? Which is going to go to something which we're going to create as well called Studio Navbar. Okay, so let's create these 2 components right now, hook it up to our studio, and then we're nearly done for the studio, right? Yes, we have to still go ahead and configure the preview, but we'll get to that later. So Command B, now what I need you to do is go ahead and create a folder called components. Okay, inside of components, I'm going to ask you to create a new file, and in that file, we're going to call it the studio navbar.tsx, right? RFCE, bam. Right, now we've got the studio navbar, and I always get the question, you know, Sonny, you don't need import React anymore. Yes, you don't. It's just my snippets tool that I use automatically does it, so that's why we end up having it. Right. So in this case, we got the studio navbar. We are going to need the link component from Next.js link, right? So that's going to be needed very shortly. And we are going to need some icons from hero icons. So eventually here we have a few things like this backwards icon, right? So I'm going to need this, the hero icons to be installed into our dependency anyway. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we're going to head over to heroicons.com. And here we get some beautiful Tailwind CSS icons that we can go ahead and install. So this is how I search for things. I can go to the documentation to then go ahead and show me how to install it. So what we're going to do right now is to go to here, and I'm going to just copy that because I'm using yarn. And then I'm going to pop in Command J, go to my second terminal, and I'm going to paste it in. So yarn, add hero icons react. Awesome. Right, so now with that bit done, we can start importing what we need. So in this case, I'm going to import a solid arrow. So as you can see here from the solid variant, so you've got different variants, outline, solid. I'm going to do the solid variant, arrow, U-turn, left icon. Okay, so that's it. We've got everything we need. The dependencies are installed and so forth. Now what I need to do is firstly, just to get it previewed up on the page, head back over to my Sanity config. Firstly, save that file, config. Let's go back over here, and I'm just going to import my studio navbar, and I'm just going to comment that one out for a second. Okay, now as you can see, my studio navbar is at the top, right? Now you can see it got rid of everything, which is not ideal, right? We still needed all of this stuff. We still need the desk, the vision, all of that. So how do we keep that? Well, the first things first is we want to render the default behavior. Okay, so inside of the studio navbar, we do get some props. Now we haven't got the prop typing definitions yet, or as I'm aware of. So in this case, we are going to do the forbidden cast to any, right? So in this case, we're going to cast to any. And then what I want you to do is first things first is just pop in a props.render default. render default, right, props. And then you're going to basically pass that through. Now, what this is basically doing for us is it's going to allow us, and what you can do here to clean things up is you can go ahead and just destructure this to render default and then do that. But we actually needed the props object, which is why I left it like this. Okay, so now if we hit save, you can see it renders the default, and then we can still have whatever we want on the top. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to have a div at the top, and then first I'm going to have a link which says go to website. So it's going to be a link which goes to the home page, and then we're going to have a link and it's going to say go to the website, right? And now what we're building right now is this backward button over here, right? Someone says, can I make login and sign up using Sanity? We just did it basically, effectively, yes, right? Now for this link, we're going to go ahead and give it a bit of styling. So here I'm going to say class name, and we're going to say the text should be a nice PuppetFam color. So in this case, I'm going to use the PuppetFam color. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply pop in the coloring itself. So in this point, bam. Now I've got the text for the PuppetFam color flex, and I'm going to item center it, hit the refresh button. We should see it comes into a nice little orange color. Okay. Now, next up, I'm going to have the arrow U-turn with a bit of styling. So we are using Tailwind CSS styling right here to go ahead and configure what we're after. So height of 6, width of 6, text is going to be the color of the PuppetFam, a margin right of 2. Now, as you can see, that's a lot better. That's not nicer. And for the overall div, we're going to say it's a flex, items are centered on the axes, justify space between them, and give it a padding of 5. Okay. And do a little refresh, and just like that, now we should have a bit more spacing at the top, and that looks a lot nicer to what we're after, right? So in this case, already looking beautiful. And if I click this now, it will take me back to the home page. Great, right? And it's using our nice little Next.js link component to go ahead and accomplish that. Now for the right side, this is more for just to showcase how you can go ahead and have, you know, something like this on the screen, but this is not that important for you to go ahead and do. So in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop in my snippet that I have here to showcase how. The main emphasis there is that if you haven't already checked out the University of Code, then what are you doing? Go check it out. Okay, so we're going to pop it inside of that div, sorry. And in this case, what am I freaking out about? I think I have actually gone too far. There we are. Yeah, I got one div too many. All right, so I'm going to pop in a div there. There we are. Okay, so in this case, hit a refresh, and all this is doing right now is it's hiding it on the phone, but on a medium screen and above, it's going to show that that container, and then inside of it, we've just got a nice little link that takes you to the University of Code. So make sure you check it out if you haven't already, and there you go. Right, that's how you can do it. So the main emphasis of that was to show you that you can customize this however you want. You can have a custom header, custom, you know, logo in this case, but that's what we're going to do next. So now we've got our custom little header assigned. We're going to go ahead and hit save and close this out. I want to do the final step, which is the custom logo. Okay, so for the logo, same steps. Command B, we're going to go into our components, create a logo.tsx file, RFCE, nice. And now here we're going to do the same principle, right? So we have our props at the top. In this case, we're going to pop in our props, and just for these components, we're just going to do a slight little basic props any. Yes, I know it's forbidden. Until we get the type definitions from Sanity, I will do it that way. Right, so we've got the render default title, and we might already have it to be fair, but in this case, I couldn't find them. Right, so at that point, now we're going to customize this. So I've done something very simply here. I've gone ahead and just put a image tag, and yes, you can completely make this a next image tag, and that would work like perfect, in fact. Right, so in fact, let's just do it. Right, I know I'm going to get killed for that otherwise. We're going to do a width and a height of 50, a height of 50, and then I'm going to say object contain, or object cover, let's do, right? And then we've got the image, and this is going to freak out, and we're going to say if we've got the render default object, then we're going to go ahead and render default, just like so. And in fact, I don't think we actually need that anymore, right? So we've got our overall div, and the div, we're just going to make a simple flex box. So it's going to be flex, items, center, space, x of 2 there, right? Now, as you can see, if we refresh and we go back to our, I don't think I've actually imported it from my config, have I? No, I don't think I did. So if we go back to my Sanity config, here we are. I need to import it from components/logo. Now it's worth mentioning as well, anything in the components folder is actually a server component by default as well. Something I didn't know until very recently. There you go. All right, so same rules apply for those. Right, now we're going to go ahead and see, we see this error. This is what I was expecting. Now what we need to do is, because we're using the Next.js image tag, we have to whitelist the domain that we're pulling the image from. So in this case, we have to go to our next config, sorry. Go over here and we have to simply type in images, domains, and we're simply going to add in links.popupreact.com. And we're then going to go ahead and go to our server, restart the server, yarn dev to restart everything up again. And now what we should see on our server is that we have whitelisted that URL and we should be able to pull images from that domain. So hitting refresh, and we should now have a custom logo, which looks exactly like the one that we previously had on our website. So we should see this right now. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that right now. So, okay, let's just refresh. And that's definitely not looking right. So there we are. Nice. And the image pops in and beautiful. That's it. We have our own custom image. Look at that. Looks great. We have the whole thing is by default is mobile responsive. In this case, you see we're using all of their layouts. So look at that, it works on the phone. So even if you're on your phone, Sanity Studio on the embedded version, you can literally go to your website, go to /studio, authenticate yourself with your Google login, and then bam, you can update your blog from your phone wherever you are in the world, hit publish, and it just works, which is so nice, right? So nice. So that is the Sanity Studio configuration done. We will be adding in the preview tab shortly, but in this case, it's time to jump over to the front end and start building things out over on that side. So localhost 3000, time to move over to this side of things. First, before we kick that off, we're gonna have a quick water break, open up the app page.tsx, and this is where we'll start. So a quick little water break before we fly forward even more. Alexandru says, amazing build, I love it. Thank you so much, guys. And I actually say that after this update with Sanity, even before I thought they were an amazing platform, but after this update, I just think they're damn awesome. Like, they're so easy to use, they're so powerful, and it just works the way I would expect it to work. And especially even as a developer, the experience of just doing what we did right now was effortless, right? Effortless, it worked down to a T, exactly what I wanted. And you get this beautiful backend which handles everything, right? There was no complicated database setup, it just handled it, right? Overall, amazing. I really can't flaw them in that regard, right? The team are doing some incredible stuff. So that's yeah, that's pretty cool. And now let's go ahead and head over to our next step. So what I first want to do is, you can see we've got our page here and we've got a studio here. Now what we can do in Next.js 13 is we can actually compartmentalize these. If, for example, we wanted a custom layout over here, and if we wanted a custom layout over there. And the reason why this might be important is because I might not want my, my header on my website, for example, this header. Notice how the header that you're about to see is not on my studio. So this section over here is not on my studio, but it could be if I was to add it here right now, because it would automatically get added to my studio. So how do we fix this problem in the new Next.js 13 layouts? So I will show you how to do this. Now, a lot of you are saying I'm getting some errors. Yes, you will get the errors because it's pretty tricky sort of stuff. So take your time, check out the code repo if you need to, and just debug. That's what debugging is for, okay? So in this case, we've got the we're going to go ahead and add something in called the group routing, right? I believe it's called the group routes. So now what we're going to do is, inside of the app, I need you to pay very close attention. We're going to create 2 folders. Now, by using parentheses, this does not affect the root at all. So we're going to have a user folder and we're going to have a admin folder. Okay. So these, oops, not there. We're going to get rid of that folder. Damn it. Get rid of that one. Yes, get rid of that. So now inside of the app folder, I want to create a admin. Yeah, so now we've got admin and user. These do not correlate to /admin or /user. They're simply, because of the parentheses, we basically omit that. So this does not affect the root. Instead, what we can do now is I can put, for example, the page in the user. Okay. And now, as you can see, okay, no, don't do that. Yeah, so we've got the page in the user. Yeah. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the studio in the admin. And notice how, and we're going to update the imports, yes. And then you're going to make sure you've actually updated all your imports, hit a refresh and make sure you're not getting any errors. Okay, so now what we should see is if we've got this nice higher sort of, level of setting things up. Now let's just double check. We've got an error here for the loading. So let's go over to loading.tsx and see what the hell's going on. So can't resolve the loading.tsx in. Okay, so now at this point, when you do this, you just have to basically kill your server and restart, because you have moved so many files around that it can sometimes screw things up. Okay, so hit a refresh and you're good, right? Head over to /studio. Notice how none of my URLs changed because of this new group roots, right? So this allows us to sort of separate our app into different areas, but not affect where the sort of the routing logic appears, right? So this doesn't affect the routing logic if you've got parentheses. So you see, we're still at /studio, even though it's an admin. Because of those parentheses, we protect the root. Okay, so that's great. Now what I want to do is I want to have two separate layouts. Okay, so the first one is, there's two options in this case. You can either have a parent layout and then you can have sub layouts, or if I was to have a layout, for example, inside of my user, what you'll find is this works, okay, but it's gonna, firstly, we have to change this to actually have it that it goes outside to reach my styles, which is because now it's inside of a folder. That works. But if I was to go into /studio now, this will likely complain because we don't actually have our layout folder configured. Do you see this? We get this horrible mess, right? And this is because we actually need to create a studio, a layout for that as well. So I'm going to copy my layout, go into my admin, and I'm going to just create I've already got a layout here. So it's already created one for me. Yeah, that's it. And instead what we want to do is go and we just need to copy our import statements. That way we've got our CSS over here. Now you're probably wondering, Sunny, that's the same file. What the hell have you done? Right. Well, in this case, first, we don't need the head there. That's fine. But instead now, this allows us to customize anything below these two roots in a different manner. Right, which is very important for the next step, because the user, I want to have all their roots always have this header in. So if I was to go into, for example, a blog like 0 to Full Stack Hero, for example, in this case, I want to have the header still here, and that's part of the layout. But if I was to have that in the overall thing, then you'd be seeing this inside of my studio. Okay, so that's why we have to eradicate that. So now we've got the setup that we initially need. We've got the admin, we've got the studio for the root, and then we've got the head layout. We've got the user, this is for the, and as you can see, because this is the first page.tsx at the highest level. If you think about it, these are kind of invisible folders. So really that's the home root. And then in here, if I had a folder called search, page.tsx inside of that, then it would be /search, yeah. So in this case, great, okay. So far we're doing really well for energy. We've got welcome to the blog, and everything is looking amazing so far. So now what I can do is we're going to actually create our headers, right? So perfect stuff. So we're going to open up our components folder, and the first thing I want to do is create the header, right? So I like to always start with the headers because it makes a lot of sense, right? So just for the user layouts, we're going to have a header, and then we're going to have a banner, right? So for the header, I'm going to simply go into our components, create a header.tsx. Gerard says, hey, Sunny, always amazing me. Thank you, dude. I appreciate you tuning in. So RFCE, we've got our header over here. We can get rid of this to clean things up. Now inside of here, all I need two things. I need the link and the image component itself. So I'm just going to pop that in right now. And then for the header itself, I'm going to go ahead and change this to be a header like so. And then we're going to have a div. In fact, we're going to have two divs. Right, so we're going to have two sort of parents here, and these divs are going to correlate to this left section over here. And I'm going to open up my screen brush right now. And then a lot of you ask all the time, what is that thing you're using to draw on the screen? It is called a screen brush, in fact. So I've got my left hand side div on my right hand side, and then we're simply going to do a flex justify between to allow it to automatically configure what the space is between them. Okay, so in that case, we've got the pub fam, and then the top div. We're going to go ahead and say, so first, let's do that. So let's just say for the header, we're going to say flex items between, item center, sorry. So the center on the y-axis, justify between. So they're spaced out automatically from on the x-axis, space between them if it ever gets to a small screen of 2, make them bold, make all the text bold by default, padding x of 10 and a padding y of 5, right? Naamir says, yo, from Bologna, Italy, what's up, dude? Good to see you. Right, so this is, we go ahead and hit refresh. And now a lot of people are asking, how do I get these sizes? I'm using the Tailwind IntelliSense, right? So in this case, firstly, for the snippets, it's this one right here, ES7 React Redux snippets. And then for Tailwind, it's this one right here. So you're just gonna type in Tailwind, you've got Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. Okay, so I hope that helps you guys out. Now, with that said, we've got the sort of top section down. So we've got to put in the first div, I'm going to have a link with an image tag, and then I'm going to say the Papa Fam. So I'm going to pop that in right now. So a link that goes back to the homepage, an image tag with a width and height of 50, the class name rounded full to make it circular, an image of the Papa Fam, and the alt tag, which is required now by default. And then we've got a H1 tag saying the Papa Fam outside of that. For this div, I'm going to make it a flex. So it's going to be flex item center, and then I'm going to space them with an X value of 2. Okay. And then, the numbers here are called, yep, thank you for that, Sijan. He goes Jasper, it's called import cost extension. Yes, that's right. So in this case now, I want to go back to my layout. Okay, so remember the layout right here, and I'm going to pop in my header in replace of that component. And if we go ahead and do that, now you can see I've imported it. And we can see that's still a server component, by the way, right? So it's a server component, and we got a little nasty error there, which we're going to fix in just a second. Okay, so that is actually because I didn't put it in the body. My bad. Right, so it should be in the body like so. Body, it should be header like this. Okay, and then we're going to put the banner in the body like so. Okay, so don't make that mistake. That's why you're getting that, right? So the children is what's in page.tsx and below. The header is always going to show now for that section. And notice how, again, I will emphasize this point, as our studio root and anything below the admin folder doesn't have its own separate layout. We don't actually abide by that, so we don't have to have the header. So we've got a custom one for that. So you see no header in here, right? But for our one on the user roots, we've got it. Okay, so firstly, smash the like button if that's new, because that was actually new to me when I was getting started with this, and that's incredibly powerful, and you can have as many as you want. Okay, so destroy that like button. We're actually doing really well today, so it's awesome to see the retention from you guys. All right, so we've got the header in place. Now we're going to go ahead and pop in the banner. Okay, so the banner is next. So for the banner, oh, sorry, I'm not even finished with the header yet. I'm jumping ahead. So the second div, let's go ahead and pop in a simple link which says sign up to the University of Code. So in this case, it's going to be a link, and this will just simply go to the University of Code. So I actually have that link somewhere around here. So I'm just going to quickly grab that, and then it'll make it a bit easier for me. There we go. Okay. So in this case, grab that link, pop it in there, and there you go. Sign up to the University of Code. And I've got a bit of styling here just to simply go ahead. And it's a bit of responsive styling. So remember, all the rules are by default mobile, and then only when we hit a medium size or any breakpoint, we should apply those sizes accordingly. Okay, so at this point now, if I was to simply hit a refresh, we've got this nice kind of top section right there. So if we refresh, you can see the error goes away. That's perfect, right? Looking really nice so far. And that button takes us over to the University of Code. So on your blog post, you can push to whatever you want. In this case, I'm pushing you to transform your new level of coding. In this case, so many people, we've already got 1,000 members inside of this University of Code. So if you're not here, you are missing out on the best damn coding challenges every day. Right, I promise you that. Right, so in this case, bam, we've got to sign up to University of Code. And then we're going to add in the banner next. So the banner is actually going to be resemblant of this section right here. So the banner is this section over here. Okay, this is going to be a responsive element. Right, Jay's also popped it in the chat if you're interested in the University of Code. So as you can see, we've got the banner there. So now what I'm going to do is go to my layout. So let's go to user layout like so. And I'm going to go ahead and create a banner component. And as you can see, I haven't got this created yet. So we're going to go to our components, banner.tsx, go back over here, RFCE, get rid of the React. We don't need that anymore. Then make this full screen for a second, pop this on the right hand side, go to our layout for the user, and we're just going to import this component that we have over here. Hit save, close that, and now we can go ahead and do that. I just want to emphasize what we are actually doing in a visual sense, right? We've got Senegal in the house. What is going on, guys? Amazing to see you. Right now for the banner, same principle, right? No different. We've got a div inside of it and then a p tag. So in this case, we've got the div here, and this is going to have a welcome to every developer's favorite blog in the Devosphere. And then we've got this new product features on the right. And remember, it's a flex row in a large screen, but a flex column on a small screen. So that way it's nice and responsive. So in this case, the first div will resemble that first section, and then the p tag afterwards will resemble the product features. In fact, I'm just going to pop in the styling for the p tag right off the box. So in this case, we've got our p tag with a bunch of styling, text gray, max width as well, so that way it doesn't get too big. And then for this div, we're going to have an H1 and an H2 tag, and I'm going to span in a bit of styling as well, right? So in this case, you can see I've got an H1, which is 7XL. I'm going to hit refresh over there. So there you go. You've got 7XL, Sunny's Daily Blog. We've got an H2 saying, welcome to every developer's favorite blog. And then around every developer's, I've just spanned an underline. So as you can see here, it spans the underline. So firstly, something's looking horrible here. So let's go over to our page.tsx, and we don't need this anymore. We can get rid of this. It's an empty page. As you can see, it's not empty. What's really happened here is it's abided by the layout, and it's going ahead and pulling in the layout. Then you can render whatever you want on the page. So technically it simplifies your code a hell of a lot once you get used to it, right? So I love it. I really love Next.js 13, the way it works. I highly recommend anyone starting a project does it right out the box to learn how it works, okay? But the banner's not finished yet, right? It's almost there. It's not finished yet. So for the overall surrounding div, I want to ignore that one. It's going to be this div that I need to style. So this should be a flex div. We're going to do a flex column. And then on a large screen, flex row. Okay, so that's the first thing I told you guys about. Okay, and then I want to make it on the large screen a space on the x-axis of 5. So that way they get spaced out a little bit more. So in this case, you can see that's pretty good. They've got a little bit of gap between them. Justify between, so that way they use up that space as we get bigger apart. That's good. And then I also want to do something. I'm going to do a font bold. I want to say padding on the x-axis of 10, padding on the y-axis of 5, and a margin bottom of 10 as well. Okay, and just like that, you can see that that looks immediately a lot better, right? So great, right? So that's looking pretty nice. And look at it, just very small little tweaks make a website, right? So the font being bold, a few things like that, absolutely incredible, right? So it just really starts to come to life when you start adding these things in. So we've got the banner looking pretty nice so far. Next up, we have the, we're gonna create the blog list, right? So before we do the blog list, we have to address something. So for this page, what we can do with Next.js and Sanity is on Next.js, we have something called preview mode. When you enable preview mode, it allows, frameworks like Sanity or backend platforms like Sanity to actually leverage that header or that cookie that's been set on the preview mode header in Next.js, and it allows us to basically go ahead and give a preview of what is unpublished on your Sanity backend. So what we can do here is really, really nice. We can actually set up 2 API endpoints, one that allows us to enter preview mode, one which allows us to exit preview mode. Once we enter preview mode, Sanity can then go ahead and stream in the data that is even unpublished, but you've got in draft state on your Sanity Content Platform. This is crucial because think about it, in production, so let's imagine you're writing a new article. You don't want to just publish it and then keep updating it while everyone's able to read it. You want to actually be able to preview it, see how it looks, see how it feels on the website. Does it read well? Get people to check it, get people to author it, all that kind of stuff. And then when it's perfect, you want to publish it. So this is what preview mode is ideal for. I'm going to show you how to implement it right now. So first things first, we need to create a Sanity client, right? So in this case, we're just going to pause here for a second because we need to do that right now. So right now we are implementing the preview mode. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce this now. So I'm going to create a lib folder at the top level. So package.json, I'm going to create a lib folder, and this is like a utils folder, no different, right? First things first, I'm going to create a sanity.client.ts file. Consider this as the setup for everything that we're going to need. So first thing I'm going to do is import the create client and go ahead and get my project ID, my data set, which in this case would be the production, and the API version. So that's great. We've got those things. Next thing I'm going to do is export a variable called the client. We're going to use the variables above to go ahead and pull these in. Okay, now for the CDN, you can, once you go ahead and deploy this, you can use a CDN if you would like to. Okay, so you can go ahead and do something like, if it's localhost, then go ahead and do you can have a ternary operator, say if there's a Vercel URL, then true, otherwise if it's localhost, then false. Really up to you. In this case, just for the demo purposes, I'm going to say false. Okay, so great stuff. We've got our client down. Then we're going to go ahead and create a sanity.preview .ts, right? And this is going to be a configuration file that helps us out with getting up that preview mode up and running. Again, all of this can be found on the website as well, okay? So don't freak out if it's not there. It's actually all in the Next Sanity documentation. So if we go all the way up to Next Sanity and we do Next Sanity preview, you'll see that we get all of the code here to go ahead and get things set up. For example, that's what we just did a second ago. This is now the preview.js, right? TS in this case. So we're going to import, we're going to firstly convert it to a client-side component. Then we're going to go ahead and define, pull in our variables that we need. And then I'm going to create a helper function called onPublicAccessOnly. Right, so this is going to be used if it's just going to throw an error saying if you're not logged in, you should get that error. Okay, so and then if we don't have the project ID or the data set, we're going to throw another error saying check your Sanity JSON or inf file. And then if all of that is good, we're going to export a little helpful hook called use preview. And we do this by basically invoking a define preview function and passing in the above. All right, so what this is doing is basically just setting things up. So when I finally pull in this use preview hook, what it should then do is it should allow me to go ahead and make queries to my endpoint. So for example, my Sanity database backend, and basically get all of the information, including the information that is in the draft state, not published state. Because remember, a CMS platform is a content management system, which means that you can have information which is published and it's immediately updated, and you can have information which is in a drafted state as well, which is crucial for this kind of platform to work, right? So that's great. And now what we're going to do is create the API endpoint. So as I mentioned, we need to be able to enable and disable this preview mode. So enable to do this, what we have to do is go to our pages API. And I'm going to delete the current hello.ts file in just a second, but I usually like to use that as a reference. So in this case, we can just go ahead. Well, in this case, we don't need it. We're going to delete it, right? So inside of API, so pages API, we still have to use the pages API for the API at the moment, right? Inside of that, I'm going to create a file called preview.ts. And this will correlate to our website /API/preview.ts. And what I want you to do is simply pop in the following. Okay, so this is what we need to put in here. And now what this does is this is going to allow us to basically handle the request that comes in. We're going to go ahead and set the response. We're going to set preview data to an empty object. You can actually pass in a token here if you've got authentication, that kind of stuff. We're going to redirect the user back to the home page, right? And then we're going to go ahead and basically send back the response. Okay, so that is basically the first thing. And then the second thing is we need a way to exit the preview once we're done, right? And the main thing really to notice here, guys, is, get rid of that. The one thing to notice here is that we're setting preview data, right? So setting the preview data means that every time a request comes in, it will see that, hang on a minute, you're in preview mode because we have preview data. Even though it's an empty object, it's still preview mode. There's still something there. It's not null, okay? So now we're going to say exit preview. So exit preview. .ts, and you're going to be mind blown, I promise you, when this works, right? Exit.ts. Now in this case, we're going to have the similar function, so we're going to go ahead and handle it, and we're going to say clear the preview data, then redirect them. So no different except this, right? Now I want you to pay attention to something. If we go back to the Sanity documentation, again, I have not made this up, it's all here. They have pros and cons as to what you should be using and why you might want to use it and so forth, and then it will show you how to go ahead and implement it. So I'm going to show you how now we take that information that we just went ahead and did, and we go ahead and set things up. So if we want to test this out, if I go to /API/preview, you can see it just redirected me back to the home page. If I go to /exit preview, it redirected me to the home page. That's great. That means it worked, right? Trust me, it worked. We can test it in just a short amount of time, right? So now what we're going to do is open up our editor, and we are going to go to our user page.tsx. Okay. Now this is where all the magic starts to happen, right? So first thing we now need to do is we need to go ahead and check if we're in preview mode. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, first things first, we actually have this nice little helper function in Next.js called preview data from Next.js headers, right? So remember, when I entered preview mode, I set that data. So what I can now do is I can say if there's preview data, then I'm in preview mode, right? Else, or in fact, we can just go ahead and do this because we're going to return anyway. We can say I am not in preview mode, or just say the home page, right? So just say not in preview mode. All right, so I want to test this out now. So we're not in preview mode right now. Let's go ahead and go to localhost/API/preview mode. Preview mode, hey, awesome stuff. Someone says, will this stream be available? Yes, it will. /API exit preview mode. Bam, they're out of preview mode. So now we have a nice toggle that works based on our API response. We can now pair this with the specific thing that we need to do to go ahead and allow us to basically stream in data from Sanity's backend before it's published. How the hell do we do that? I'll show you, don't worry. Okay, so at this point, what we need to do is we need to create a query firstly. So first things first, we need to create a GROQ query. Okay, so we need to install the GROQ or import the GROQ module from Next Sanity. GROQ is again the query language we use to basically fetch. So it's similar to SQL, but it's basically the GraphQL alternative in Sanity's world, right? So then what we're going to do is we're going to say export const GROQ with backticks, and this is how we go ahead and do it, right? So we've got a backtick right here, and we're not actually going to export that. We're just going to have it as a const. Right, and then here what we want to do is we're going to create a query. Now in GROQ, right, there's tons of documentation on how you can go ahead and query database stuff online, but in this case I'm just going to show you how we do it in a very simple matter over here, right? So in this case we're going to have a GROQ, and I would recommend you have the GROQ I think we have the GROQ. Yeah, there we are. Sanity IO developer tools. Enable these. It allows you to have GROQ syntax highlighting. Okay, so that's going to help you out a bit. So we're going to have GROQ backtick, not normal quote, backticks, right? Then we're going to say, get me all of the posts which are of type post. And then, so this means all of type post. And then we're just going to select, similar to how we do it in GraphQL, all the fields. But as author and categories are references, this will expand those references and get me the full information. Then we're going to go ahead and say order them by creator. So this is called piping. We're basically piping the result of this, and we're ordering it by created at descending. Right. So all of this information is basically provided when we set things up using the schema that we had in the initial beginning. So now we have our query that we can basically pull. And if you want to check this out, see if I'm not lying, simply at this point go to your. Well, let's go ahead and go to localhost/studio. And I will prove to you that this is exactly what it is, right? So if we go to our post, or in fact, let's go to the Vision plugin. And now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go ahead and pop in this right here. And I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, I get all of my response, right? So this is really nice. We actually have the response come back. And as you can see now, if I didn't have this, right? If I didn't have the expansion here, so this means expand it. And even for categories, as it's an array, we have to expand all the array elements. So instead, if I got rid of that author, I just want to show you what happens right now. It will simply give me back a reference, which means that it's basically like a join to another area of the table. So in order to expand that, to get the data out, we add in the expansion. And now you can see it gives me the entire information back. So that's how we do it, right? So in this case, that's great. That's ideal. That's what we want. We can now use that. Okay. So first things first, after this, if we basically are in preview mode, I'm going to handle it one way. And if we're not in preview mode, I'm going to handle it another way. If we're not in preview mode, so if we're in preview mode, we won't even get past this bit. So we're going to say const posts equals await, right? Client. And we're going to import our client from our lib file that we created earlier. Client.fetch query. Okay. And remember, because we have this right here, we have to make our function asynchronous. And we can do that because we are now in server components with Next.js 13, right? So if we're not in preview mode, it's going to go ahead and fetch this stuff, right? So in this case, I can actually show you this. So I'm not in preview mode right now. So if I was to go ahead and console log, if I was to go ahead and console log all of the posts and I hit a refresh, you will see I get a huge amount of, all the information come through on the server. And the reason why it's not coming out over here is because remember, it's server component. It's rendered on the server. So that means the console logs are also on the server. You won't get any console logs over here. Nothing, see? Empty, right? So at this point now, we are going to handle the preview data. Right? So what we need to do is create something called a preview suspense, right? Preview suspense is going to be a component, and this is very simple to do. All we need to do is go over to our files, head over to our components, and we're going to create something called a preview suspense component.tsx. And inside of here, we're simply going to go ahead and pop in the following. Now, this is only a temporary solution from Next Sanity until they basically patch the modules so that way it supports Next.js 13 out of the box. Right, until we get that sorted, we would have to basically go ahead and manually have the use client tell it as a server component wrapper, right? But then we can go ahead and use our suspense wrapper. Again, if you're interested in anything about suspense or you're confused, that Next.js 13 video, which will be linked up right now on the screen, is the video you need to watch because I explain how suspense boundaries work in Next.js 13. So heading back over to our page, right? So in this case, go to our user page, right? So here, what we now need to do is import the preview suspense from the component library, right? So in this case, we've got our preview suspense. I'm now going to wrap our preview suspense like so, okay? And it's probably, you're probably wondering what the hell's going on here. Well, in fact, firstly, we need to go ahead and wrap this like so. Just put a div 1. This requires a fallback, that's why, right? So in this case, this requires a fallback. And all I'm gonna do here is basically have a div with a p tag saying loading inside of it, okay? So let's go ahead and pop in our div, which is saying loading preview data right now, okay? Now, after that is down, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have and I've made a little mistake here because of, let's just double check. I got my code there. Everything looks fine. No. Okay. Yep. There we go. And then I've got my preview. There we go. All right. So inside of here now, I want to have a blog list, right? So what I now need to do is have a special version of my blog list. So this one is going to render out the blog list itself. So eventually what we'll have here is basically a component which is called blog list. Here, what I need is something called a preview blog list. So it's basically going to be very similar, but it's going to be preview blog list. Okay. Now this preview blog list is going to be created now. So we're going to go to our components, create preview blog list.tsx. Okay. Now inside of our preview blog list, first thing we need to do is import a few things that we might need. First things first, convert it to a client-side component, right? Because we need to know if the user is mounted. This will be using that blog list component I'll create in a second as well, right? Second thing is we're going to accept a few props. The first one is a query, right? And the reason being is because when we pulled this in, you'll remember that if I go to my user page, remember that as we pull it in, we're going to basically be passing in the query like so, right? So we're going to pass in the query like so. I'm going to then import this in to our app. So first, and then the final thing, sorry, is we're going to go ahead and do the following. So here you can see, if I show you, we've got a function called preview block list. This takes in our props. We destructure the props to get the query out of it, which I'm going to be passing through here. Then let's just firstly import that like so we stop getting an error. There we go. And then as you can see now, we're going to use our handy preview hook. And in this case, the first value is no, but the second is the query that we pass in. And this preview hook is really awesome, right? The first one was a token. In this case, we don't need the token for authentication. We're just going to pass in query. This will give me the post, but it won't just give me the normal post. It will give me all the Sanity posts, which aren't actually published as well. So it'll give me all of the stuff, which is, let's say, modified or not yet published from a get-go, and it will actually stream that into my app, right? So in this case, I've got loading posts, and you can actually do, I've just got this for debugging purposes. We don't need that right now. And then we're going to pass through the blog post like so. So this is essentially just a abstraction wrapper for the preview mode. So we actually need to create the blog post itself to see what's going on now. So first thing that we need to do is blog list.tsx. And then we're going to say RFCE, get rid of the React at the top. And this blog list will take in, as I mentioned before, take in posts, right? And we're going to have props, and we're going to go ahead and give in those types or props right here. So we're going to have a type definition of post, which resembles all of the array of posts that are going to come through. Okay. But first things first, let's just test something out. Okay. So firstly, we have to go ahead and import our blog list where we need it. So preview blog list is imported already. We go back to our home page and we can see that the blog list is not being used. So we're just going to say blog list. Let me just double check. In fact, here we don't even need any of this. We're just gonna say render me out straight up a blog list and pass the query or pass the posts in like so. Okay, like that. And as you can see, that's not complaining. That's good so far. If we go into blog list, we just simply have to give it a post, right? So let's go ahead and take a quick second to create our type definitions. I've already done the hard work here for you. We're going to create a typings.d.ts file. And this is for all of the custom type definitions that we're going to be writing throughout today's build. Now I'm going to show you basically an example of how we can just you can just follow my lead here. I've done the hard work of going into Sanity, checking what they build out. And there are actually libraries and plugins provided by Sanity which do something called inference, where they can basically look at the schema and build out the type definitions. I haven't used that today, but it's something which is definitely worth checking out. Okay, so I don't want to disregard that. All right, so first things first, every type's going to have a base. It's going to have a creator.id, rev type, and a revision basically, and updated at. Right, and they're going to be strings. Then we're going to have a post, and the post is going to extend the base, so it's going to have all of these, plus it's going to have author, body, categories, main image, slug, title, and description. And then I've done the hard work for you for the rest of the fields. So these are all based off the schemas that were predefined for us. For example, the one that I'm about to put in is for the author, and all of these fields are basically gone ahead and mapped to my own sort of style here. So in this case, author extends base. Then this we've got block is for like rich text, for example. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop in a few of them like so, and you can feel free to pause the video or use the Puppet GitHub repo to get access to these type definitions as well. Right now, for the block, we are simply going to go ahead and pop in things like that, like so. We've got span, category, and so forth. Right, so in this case, let's pop these in as well. And then we've got the main image and the title, right? So I'm saving you a bunch of time just by popping these in. So now we've got all of our type definitions that we're going to need. I done that work manually, right? Basically to go ahead and figure out what's what, but you don't have to do that. You can save yourself the hassle. Okay, so you can pause the video, write that down as you need to. That's going to be your type definitions for this bit. As you can see now, we don't get the error because typings.d.ts is automatically imported in Next.js 13. Okay. So that's great. Now at this point, let's go ahead and set up our blog list component. So this has got a lot of moving parts to it. And in fact, what I want to show here is firstly, I want to console log the posts.length. And I want to show something here, okay? So when we are in preview mode, I want to see how much we're getting in terms of response. Then I'm going to add in a drafted image, and then we're going to see what we get back as well, okay? So if I go in here, we should see like 9. So in this case, am I in preview mode? So let's exit preview mode, exit preview. And as you can see, I've still got 9, right? Because nothing is in draft state. So now what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to open up a separate localhost/studio. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I want to basically emphasize a certain point here. Okay, so I've got my studio on the left, I've got my app on the right, and I've got my terminal in the middle. So let's go ahead and add in, for example, another post. And this post is going to be a test, right? So I'm going to say test. It's going to generate test. The author is going to be, let's just put in as J. The image here, I'm going to go ahead and pop in an image right now. So I'm going to select an image, upload it just like so. I'm going to pop in something like my face. Okay, categories, let's go ahead and add an item. Let's simply pop in the YouTube category, publish that's fine, and just say hello world in the body. Okay, now this is not published. Okay, this is not published. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do /API preview. And now once I'm in preview mode, guys, if I hit the refresh, you can see, look, oh, loading preview data. You can see my preview handlers working, guys, right? But notice something. Remember, when we have our preview mode, remember what we did previously? We actually had to make it a client component, which means the reason why I'm not seeing logs right now is because now we should be seeing 10 over here. There we go. So that means that it's showing everything plus that one drafted item that I just had. Okay, so that's actually perfect. It works. So that means that we now work. If we do exit preview, we will see 9 coming back over. Oops, API/exit preview. Now we should see our homepage rendered with 9. But as you can see, the proof in the pudding was that if I go ahead and do API preview, it goes ahead and simply has a loading preview data fallback as it loads the preview data. So that's amazing. Now, there is something I noticed. If you've got the React Dev Tools enabled, you're gonna have to disable it until they fix that. There's a little bug in there at the moment that I didn't have time to basically raise. I told the team about it, but right now the React Dev tools are causing a bug with Next.js 13 server components and this sanity mechanism where it's streaming in, so you can't actually use the React Dev tools with this. So simply uninstall or disable the extension temporarily while you get this sorted. Okay, but when you push to production, won't be an issue. Okay, so at this point, quick little water break, guys. Absolutely incredible stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. I'm gonna go ahead and pop on some new music as well. There we go. Let's get into a bit of a flow state now, because we've got a big juicy bit of coding right now. So, and you can see I've not published that, right? So that's great. But if I was to publish it now what you'll see is when I hit refresh, we should have 10. If I exit preview mode, API exit preview, and look at that, 10, because I published it. And this is just because it hasn't refreshed, right? So you got to do a hard refresh sometimes. Look at that. After I published, it went to 10. So perfect stuff. It works. So let's carry on strong, guys. Let's get into a nice kind of enjoyable state. This is where it gets fun. We've got the blog list with the posts. And now I need to get this into this beautiful website with ISR, all this cool stuff. First things first, let's build out this right here, what you see. So first thing over here, we're gonna have a horizontal line with a border, and that is simply going to be like a strike through line. Now you're going to have to refresh your page after you add this in, because sometimes with Next.js 13 server components, the way that we actually go ahead and get that hot reloading mechanism, it doesn't always work the way that I expect it to. So you're going to find that same thing happens to you, right? Here we're going to have a div, and inside of here we're going to have all the posts. Okay, so how do you do a hard refresh? Just Command R. I'm just talking about a normal refresh, sorry. Right, so inside of here now, okay, we are going to have a div, right? So this is going to resemble the div itself. Well, in fact, we're going to posts.map for every single post, right? And I have got an entire video about the mapping function. If you are watching the replay of this afterwards, around the video, there's going to be a pop-up on the screen that teaches you all about the ES6 mapping function. Make sure you check it out, right? So in this case, we've got a, we're going to have a div here, so a div. And the post is going to be the key for that div, because you should always have that. It's going to be post.id. So now you can see I get all of my IntelliSense. Beautiful. That comes back from Tailwind. Okay. It's B says, yo, amazing vibes. That's what I'm talking about. Destroy that like button, guys. Destroy it. Come on. We've got literally over 300 likes on the way. Let's go. And I'm telling you, this video is going to get to thousands. I'm telling you. Right. So at this point, we've got the div. And then inside there, we're going to have a div with an image tag. Right, so this is going to have an image tag inside of it. And this is going to be a Next.js image tag, like so. Okay, now this image tag, I'm going to go ahead and pass in the source. Now, what we need before I can use this image tag is the URLs that Sanity gives us back are special CDN URLs, which means they're cached on the Sanity network, but we need to have a URL that we can use and basically whitelist to go ahead and allow us to actually render it on the Next.js image component. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to create a helper function called URL4. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to basically convert the URL that comes back into a representable URL that can be passed into our image component that allows everything to work. So in order to do all of that, we need a helper function. So let's go into our lib, create a file called url4.ts. Inside of that file, we're going to go ahead and create the following. So I'm going to import the following dependencies. Client and image URL builder from Sanity image URL. This is slightly more modern than the previous approach that you might have seen, okay? So we've got a builder object. Then after that, we need to simply create a function and export that function, okay? And this image URL builder will simply allow us to basically return the value. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and have a URL that we can pass into our image component. So I'm going to hit save now. This helper function is what is going to allow us to have that magic, which passed in from the Sanity image URL module. Okay, so now I can import this into my application. And then you see here, This is the magic bit. So here we can do dot, and in fact you can actually set that height, width, all this stuff on the CDN. So when it makes that request over at Sanity, you can actually change it to get you the image at a certain resolution. So the CDN is very powerful, right? So definitely check out what you can do with that image URL. In this case, we're just going to get the URL itself, and then we're going to allow our Next.js to do its thing. So at this point, we are going to get an error now. The reason why we're going to get an error is because we haven't gone ahead and whitelisted the CDN Sanity.io from our image directory. So we have to go ahead and whitelist it. So next.js, next configs, let's go to our next config.ts, and we're going to add it to the list of whitelisted images or domains, right? We then need to restart our server. So Control C to cut the server, and then we're going to run it with yarn dev. And we're going to go ahead and hide it. There we go. Nice. Right. And then we hit a hard refresh. So just Command R. And now what we should see is a huge image on the screen just flying in. That's because we've got a fill right now, which is not ideal. And it's definitely not doing what we want. Okay. So at this point, we now need to go ahead and get this into a state that I like. So we need to make the surrounding div relative. So whenever you have a fill image, you want to make the surrounding div relative. And then I'm going to say the width should be 4, the height should be of 80. Okay, let's give it a drop shadow. And in fact, I'm just going to pop in the rest of the styling to save us a bit of time. So I'm going to give it a drop shadow. And when we hover over it, I want it to animate the scale a little bit as well. So this is what the transform does. Let's hit a refresh. And as you can see now, if I hover over these, you can see nothing's happening because I've done group hover. Right, group hover means that the surrounding div would need something called a group. This just simply means that if I hover over any of the elements inside of this, it will count as a hover. So we have to first say group. I'm going to make it a cursor pointer, and then I'm going to say this will also be a flex column. Right. So now let's go ahead and see what this did. So if I hit refresh, you can see if I hover over it, look at that. Ooh, I get this nice like little growth effect, right? And these are all the images coming from the back end. That's the one I actually just recently added. Great stuff. Okay, so now we've got this looking like horrible, quite frankly. We have to get it looking much nicer. So next up, alongside the image, we are going to have another div. Okay, so alongside that image, we're going to have another div, and this div will simply have the following inside. We're going to have a div inside of there, and I'm going to have 2 p tags. Okay, the first p tag is going to have the post title. Okay, so this p tag, I'm going to replace it with the post title, and it's going to be a font bold. Okay, the second p tag is going to be the date, basically the timestamp. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and replace this p tag with the following. So new date, passed in the created app, and I'm going to say to locale date string, I'm going to make it a US time string, and this is the formatting I'm giving for it. So this will give it a nice format, something like this, December 13th, 2022. Okay. And if you're watching in the future, make sure you let me know in the comment right now by saying, what's up? All right. So let's say absolute, bottom 0. I love it when I look back on my videos like ages ago, and then I look back and I'm like, wow, I was talking to the audience back then. We've grown so much, it's crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and say absolute. Now what we have to do here is a nice little trick, because I want to absolutely position this on top of the image and have this nice effect. So how do we do that? So we're going to say absolute bottom width 4. And then I'm going to give it a bit of styling. We'll say background opacity with a background color, drop shadow, and a few things in between, right? So let's go ahead and pop this. Where did I go? So here, and I'll explain what we're doing here. So what I've actually done here, but if I hit the refresh, let's just wait until it comes in. There we go. So what I've done there is I've added in a background color of black. I've given the background a blur. So you can see how it slightly blurs into the background. A background opacity of 20. That way you can just barely see through it. Rounded the corners off slightly. Drop shadow large. Text should be white. Padding of 5, and flexed it, right? So justify between, because eventually we're going to have these on the other side. Okay. So that's exactly what we've done here. Now outside of that div, I'm going to have another div. Right, so again, if you do find any of this very tricky, make sure you definitely go ahead and check out the Papa GitHub repo. All the code is currently available on there. I've actually already uploaded it. Right, so if you do get stuck and you need to resort to it, then go ahead and check it out. Right, so at this point, I'm going to have a div, and inside of that div, I'm going to have the category title. Okay, so that's going to have a category title inside of it. And this, I'm just going to style out accordingly. I'm going to have a background color of our Papa Fam color, and I'm going to have the text center and so forth. So just a few bit of basic styling things in order to give us that overall look. Now, in this case, you can see the categories pop up, but they're kind of ugly. I want to fix that. I want to say that they should be in a flex column fashion on the mobile view, but when we hit a medium screen or above, a flex row, right? And then I want to give it a gap of 2. Gap of 2 is a bit cleverer on the y-axis only, because it knows that if it's in the opposite orientation, it won't just have this random space like space x of 2, right? So on the medium screens, we're going to give it an x spacing, and then the items should be centrally aligned as well. Now, if we hit the refresh, we should see that that looks beautiful. Now it's got a bit of spacing between it, and on a larger screen, oops, what am I doing? Okay, on the larger screen, you can see it's in the vertical mode. That's perfect, right? So how the hell do I fix this nastiness right now? So this should look like this. Why doesn't it look like that, right? Well, we're almost there. Well, first things first is underneath all of this, right? We're gonna go ahead and have, so right now where I have the category, outside of this div, 1, 2, 3, so outside of this div, we're gonna have a div with 2 p tags inside of it. Okay, the first one is going to be the post title. Okay, the second one is going to be the post description. Hit save. Now what we should see if we refresh the page is we should see the test and a description underneath it. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and style this accordingly. I'm going to say the margin top here should be 5, and this is going to be a flex 1 because I need this to take up majority of the space that we have left over. Right. Now here for the class names, I'm going to say that this should be an underline, text should be large, and it should be a font bold. Right? Let me know if you're enjoying this right now. There should be a huge amount of focus because we are currently flying. Right? Then we're going to say that the text should be gray with a value of 500. Now, there is a slight issue. In some of these, you see it goes on to 3 lines, 4 lines, 5 lines, right? That can be too big for a preview. For a very basic preview, we might not want that. That's the problem, right? So in this case now, you can see it's starting to look like this, but I want to have it cut off. So what we're going to use is something called the line clamp, right? So in this case, if I type in Tailwind CSS line clamp, you'll get an article that pops up called Tailwind CSS line clamp, right? Simply head down, it will show you how to install it. So we're going to install this into our project right now. Command J, go to our second terminal, simply pop in and say yarn add. We're going to add that in. Then we're going to go ahead and add it to our list of required plugins. So if I go into my Tailwind config on the side, now you can see inside of plugins, require it. And now just like that, we have access to the line clamp function. The line clamp function is awesome. Basically, I want to say here, it's going to clamp the line, so truncate it essentially, but you can do up to like 5 lines, up to 4 lines. We're going to say after 2 lines, that's enough, right? We should cut it. So now if I was to go ahead and do this, you can see nothing goes over 2 lines. It always does a ... Great, right? That's perfect. Now, the only final thing we need is the read post, right? So the read post is this little arrow right there. So for this one, I want to go ahead and where we've got our div outside of here, I'm going to have a p tag, and this is simply going to say read post. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to have the arrow right icon pop in at here with a bit of styling, very basic styling. We can import this from the top by doing the following. We can import it from the hero icons library, go back down, and a little bit of basic styling here to fix that out. So what I'm going to do is just a very simple bit of styling with a flex ruling, font bold, and when I hover over it, it underlines. Okay. In this case now, you can see that when I hover over the entire group, say group hover, it underlines that. Now, this is super hard to see what the hell's going on. So we have to go to the overall outside div, or actually the one surrounding the posts. And here is where I add in the magic. I'm going to say grid. Grid columns 1 on a mobile view. When we get to a medium size screen, I'm going to say grid columns 2 because we want to get to a bit of a bigger screen. Then what I'm going to say, the padding X should always be a value of 10. Right now it's touching the side 2 forward, right? Then it's going to say a gap of 10. So I want a gap of 10 between everything. I want the gap between the y-axes to be 16. So really I could have done gap X 10 there. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it. Gap y-axis and padding bottom of 24. So that way when you scroll down, you've got a little bit of breathing room after the last article. So let's go ahead and hit refresh. And this will make a huge difference now. Look at that. Oof, just a little bit of breathing room now. Right? And when I go into a bigger screen, look, oh, we get 2. And look at that. Oh, nice, right? That's clean. Okay. Right, so everything's looking very clean so far. But this still doesn't look right? Why is my main website restricted to a max width, but this looks a bit too wide, if anything? So how do I fix that? Well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to my original page layout, which is surrounding all of our child components. So we're gonna go into our app, user layout, and right here for the body, I'm going to simply add in max width of 7XL with a margin X of auto. This means it will never get bigger in any of the user side routes. So if I refresh now, bam. That overall is a lot easier to read than what we previously had, right? Overall, beautiful. Looks great. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I actually want to delete that test article. It's kind of irritating me. So I will, that's fine. We can have it up for now. It's fine. I'm just going to low key see if I can just modify that. It's fine, we're gonna waste time on that. So in this case, great, we've got all of the UI looking great. Now I just need this to be a clickable element. Now you're gonna run into this issue a little bit with Next.js 13, where if we have a client-side or server-side component, but I don't want to change the entire, I don't want to change, and yes, you can refactor this into a post component 100%, and I recommend you highly do that. But at this point, what if I want to have a sort of a linking bit of logic, right? So in this case, I just want a linking. I want to wrap this in something like a link, right? Well, in this case, it's a bit trickier than that because this is a server component. And sometimes, as much as that does work, it's based off a dynamic prop. So we have to sort of have a balance here of what is client, what is not client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can do, there's a few ways you can do this, but I'm going to show you how to do a higher order component, client side component, right? So here, I'm going to create a client side route.tsx file. And then I'm going to go ahead and say RFCE. And this is a client side route. Now, if we go into our layout, you can see that here, we've got this children, right? So I'm going to copy that children. I'll simply pass that as the props. This just means that if any children are underneath it, are simply going to get rendered out. Okay. So instead of this, I'm just going to say children get rendered out. So that way they can basically, this is a wrapper now. And then we're going to say link. Right? But I'm not only going to leave it at that. Where we've got children, I'm also going to pass in something called the root. And for the root, I'm also going to give the type definition where I'm going to say the root is a string. Okay. So in this case now we've got our props, children, and we've got a root string. And then the href, I'm going to pass in as a root. Okay. Now this is going to use the client. So this is going to be a client side component. Okay, now this is where Next.js gets quite clever because it knows that by separating the logic and by passing the server component through as a prop, it knows that what it can render as a client and what it can't render as a client. It will handle that on its own. So what we can now do is this overall wrapper for each individual element. I want it so that when we click this, it's actually going to become a clickable element that takes me to that page, right? So, and it's going to be /post/ the slug. Right, and the slug in this case will be, for example, if I was to click on Sanity Studio v3, the slug that resembles this page, so the blog post page, is going to be the slug value here. And that's also going to be the one that gets pre-built in static terms. Okay, so now for the post map div, we're going to go into our blog list. And here I'm going to go ahead and change this to client side root. Right, and as you can see, if I go down here, so client side root should change as well. Going back up here, we don't have the class name that goes in anymore, right? So in fact, what I messed up there, sorry, I've completely screwed something up. So leave that as a div, Yeah, what we should be doing instead of that is wrapping the whole thing with a client side root. There we go, yeah? And then take the exiting component, wrap it around the end like so, okay? Now here we say href equals, and I'm now gonna pass in a backtick. So I'm going to say not href, sorry, the root equals backticks, and then I'm going to say /post/ and then we're going to do string interpolation. We're going to say post.slug.current. That gives us the current slug root. And then also, because this is now the higher value, that needs to have the key. Okay, so just like that, if you did it all right, what we should see now is that if we simply do a refresh, we should see now that these are clickable elements, right? but we've divided the server-side logic with the client-side logic correctly. So if I was to go into the meta clone now, if I click this, you can see, wham, it worked. It took me to post/meta clone. That's perfect. That means it's actually exactly what we wanted right now, which is ideal, okay? So first things first as well is I want to give you a live demonstration of the preview mode. So now we have finished with the UI for this side. Now what I want to do is I want to pull out this, and I'm just going to show you that the preview mode actually works the way we anticipated it, right? So in this case, if I was to go to /API/preview, now what we should see is loading preview data. There we go. And this is now being streamed live. So if we go down to our Sanity Studio, watch this. If I type in 4 and I go ahead and simply, where have I done this? Go here, sorry. There we go. Yeah, so 4. So if I was to type in Sanity Studio, oh my God, this is cool. Look at that, guys. It's literally streaming it in. That's damn powerful, right? So at this point, you can properly change everything, mess around with it, configure it, and all this stuff, right? So simplified yet powerful customization. I'm not sure why that one is actually errored out. Oh yeah, okay. So in this case, I actually added my own custom field. So here it says unknown field. This is not unknown, but what I forgot to mention was I added in a description field. So let's do that as well. I completely forgot about that. So let's go into post. And what I want you to do is go into your code. So yeah, if you ever get that error, it's because I forgot to add in. I forgot to show you that actually. So schemas, post. And where we've got our title, underneath it, I'm going to define another field called description, enter a short snippet for the blog. So I've added in my own custom field. So that's just an example of how you can add in your own custom fields into the roots, right? And now if I go into Sanity Studio, you should see that that is no longer erroring out. Instead, it just gives it up at the top with a nice little description, right? And again, preview mode working in all of its glory. If I was to say, wow, yet powerful, you see how you can demo it, and now you can be like, okay, that's perfect, that's what I want, I'm ready to publish it, right? And you can go ahead and test it out and things like that. So before we jump into the actual page routing aspect, I want to show you how we can have a preview mode here for this home page. Now you can upgrade it so that way you can eventually have each individual page, but I'm going to keep it relatively simple in this case. So I just want to show you that how instead of having 2 windows up, we can probably enhance this a little bit more so that way we can have a preview mode show up on the studio itself, which is damn powerful. Okay, so how the hell do we do that? So first thing I need to do is go to Sanity Config, and here is where we're going to go ahead and create the thing that we need. So let's go into our Sanity Config. Okay, and then inside of the plugins, so inside of the desk tool, we're going to add in something called, if we go here, you can see default document node. So I'm going to create a custom one. I'm going to create a custom default document node. So what I'm actually going to do is create a folder, a file called structure.ts. Right? And you can feel free to, refactor this, put in the appropriate files and so forth. We're going to import something called Sanity plugin iframe pane and the Sanity desk, right? Import that we need. Firstly, we need to install this new plugin. So Sanity plugin iframe. This is a plugin from Sanity themselves. The instructions for how to install this are online as well. So in this case, you can see here, we've got the install command, how you can do it. So I'm going to do yarn and add Sanity. Command J, pop it in like so, bam, go back over, and here you can see they've got some instructions on how we can go ahead and do it. So I'm going to show you how we can conditionally add this in if we're looking at a post. So I don't want to show this preview for everything. I just want to show it if it's a post. Okay, so if you're wondering how the hell I get the next part, this is where I got the example from, okay? So I'm going to show you now how we do this, and then you can pause the video, look at it, introspect it, have a look at it, and figure out what needs to happen. So this is the function that we are going to write. Okay, get default document node. Okay, so in this case, we're not returning anything. Okay, so I need to say if the schema type, so firstly, the 2 things we get here are a S, which goes to S, which stands for structure builder, and then the second argument here was actually the options, right? So we're going to say if the schema type is equal to post, Then we want to go ahead and add in this new custom view. Okay, so in this case, the way we do it is I'm going to pop in a block of code right now. So what we do is we return something called the structure. And what we're doing is we're modifying it. We're saying, get the document and here's the views. And we pass in an array of different views. And what we're doing is the original form is essentially what we see previously. It's the thing that we already see. So the form is actually this. So the form is already this stuff, right? Then what I'm saying is, because remember, it's an array of views. So the form is all of this. The next view we're going to add is an iframe, and they're passing in a bunch of options. Now, what I've done here, guys, is I've passed in, I've said, if we've deployed this, it should show not the local host, but the actual deployed version. Otherwise, it should show localhost 3000. And then automatically afterwards, it should append API preview to any of these URLs that we have. We're going to make the default size desktop. And we're going to change the reload to be, there is a button to reload, but we don't, there's actually another option here. I can't remember where it was, but it was like on interval as well, but we don't want to have that. And then you can pass in attributes and so forth. And we're going to give it the title of preview. So we simply hit save now, go back over to our Sanity config. And if I pass in the get default document node and hit save, now you can see, oh, we have a new preview pane because it's one of the arrays of things that we pass back. So let's have a look what happens now. So if I click on preview, we should load up API preview, loads up the preview data, and now you can see I get my website, which is amazing. But you're probably wondering, oh, what's the point if you can't see both? So here you can split the pane, and then you can actually do the following. So let me go ahead and why does that happen? Oh yeah, we split the pane, click preview. And now just like this, I have a preview on my right. I can go down to my Sanity. Let's have a look. And I've done it for the home page. You can do it per post, which is probably more useful. But in this case, now I can say like version 5. And you see how I can see it all in one screen, which is absolutely phenomenal, right? So this is all the power of Sanity Studio of V3, embedded in our own website with amazing plugins like you see right here. Right, so this is game changer. I'm sorry, but that's absolutely incredible, right? So as you can see, super clean, super nice installation. And then we've got the nice kind of live preview on the side. So that's the live preview down. And that's just an example of one of the many, many plugins that you can go ahead and add in, including the new global search functionality. So in this case, you can actually go ahead and even search over here, which is a brand new Sanity V3 option. You can add a filter in and you can go ahead and filter based on anything. And it basically forms these global search filters out of your schema definition. So you don't have to do that. It just does it manually, which is great if you've got tons of documents inside of your app. Okay, so absolutely phenomenal stuff. Let's go ahead and carry on strong. The next step naturally is to build these pages. So what happens when I click on, let's say like the Sanity Studio clone? Well, right now we get this. What I ideally want is something like this to happen. If I click it, we get this beautiful page, right, which renders all of this rich text, right? And I'm going to show you how we can render out this rich text. So if you see on the back end, so if we were to look at our actual studio itself, you can see the rich text editor comes through like this. It's simply rich text with images, everything. We need to render that into this, right, on the screen. So it actually renders out onto as a blog post, right? And this is basically looking at what elements we have. Is it a H1? Is it H2? And then we basically render it based on that. So I'm going to show you how the hell we do that. And then I'm going to show you how we can statically pre-generate these pages so that we can go ahead and have a extremely fast website. So on my website, you can see right now, notice the header never changes. If we simply click into this one, bam, it's already ready, right? If we click into here, bam, it's statically generated pages. And these are all revalidating after 60 seconds, I believe. So if I go to the University of Code, every single 60 seconds, this will basically go ahead and refresh the static page if users are still visiting it. Absolutely game changer stuff. Quick little water break before we build the actual blog page itself. And let me know if you're enjoying the video so far. Smash through another 100 likes. That's amazing, guys. Already at 300 likes. This is crazy. All right. So at this point, and remember, if you haven't already, subscribe to the video and smash the thumbs up button if you're enjoying and want more content just like this. So at this point, let's go back to our app, and then we need to create this route. So first thing I want you to notice is how we're at post / and then we're at a wildcard value. So we need to create that route. So how do we create wildcard values in our routing system? So dynamic routing. Well, it's actually simpler than you might think. What we're going to do is inside of our user folder, we're going to create a folder for that route. We're going to create a post folder. Okay. Inside of there, so another folder is going to be made with square brackets, and we're going to say slug. Slug is essentially that in the back end where we had here, you see slug. So slug v3, for example, is a slug. And no matter what blog you're in, each one will have its own unique slug. So in this case, I've created a folder post slug, and then I'm going to go ahead and create a file inside of it called page.tsx. We're going to do a standard functional component, and in this page, we're going to go ahead and simply make this a post page. So this one is going to be simply called the post, right? This is a post page itself. This takes props, and this has prop types that are associated with it. The prop types follow a very predictable shape. So in this case, because the props actually contain the dynamic value. So in this case, if I was to go ahead and destructure this, the props come through and we get the params, and we actually get the slug directly out of those params. So now what you can see here is I could say post slug, right? And just like that, what we can actually see now is we shouldn't be getting a 404. Instead, now you can see the layout will be preserved. We can see the Sanity v3. Okay, amazing. So post Sanity v3. If I was to go back home and I went to, for example, the Spotify clone, you can see post Spotify clone. Amazing. So now we have the information on our side, so that way we can make the appropriate GROQ call to go ahead and fetch the information. Okay, so remember, as we are on a server component, we can just do our fetches very simply now. In the first line of our functional component, we can say const query equals GROQ. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to say GROQ backticks. And then firstly, in order to use GROQ, we need to import it like so. So I'm going to pop it in like so at the top. And then inside of our query here, I'm going to make a very simple query. I'm going to simply go ahead and pass in the following to it. I'm going to say, I'm going to pass in this right here. Okay. So we're basically querying if the type is post and if the slug.current value is equal to this wild slug value, right? And then we're going to get the first result back, because that's all we care about, is that if there's a result back, that's the one that we need to see. Okay. Then we have this. So we're basically pulling out all of the information. We're expanding the author. We're expanding the categories. Okay. Now, how do I pass in this dynamic slug value? Well, when we make this call, all we do is we say const post. We're going to give it a type of post. We're going to say await client.fetch. And basically, as you can see here, client, we need to import from our lib, right? So our sanity file. As you can see, the second argument is actually going to be the params. So any param that you have, in this case, slug is the param here. And luckily enough, we've also got the name slug here. But if this was ID, for example, this would be slug ID. So it'd be slug ID, right? But in this case, because we've got ES6, the same values can be the same thing there. So in this case, this gives me back the post. So now we have the entire post information. So if I go ahead and say console log the post, check this out, guys. So if I go ahead and do Command J and I go into my terminal and I refresh, and let's go to, I'm in preview mode again. Let's go to, let me exit preview mode quickly, exit preview. There we go. Let's just get a nice load. I'm going to go to the 0 to Full Stack Hero, which is our amazing flagship. If you haven't already, check out 0 to Full Stack Hero and join us over at the Papa Farm. Yeah, cheeky plug. And now you can see I pull in all the data, right? So the post gets loaded out. This is all the information from the post. So this is exactly the one that we're after. The author is me. The name is Sunny. And you can see the body of the text and everything. And then you can even see like the title 0 to Full Stack Hero. So that's everything that we're looking for right there. Okay. Now at this point, we are going to render it out on the screen. So I have all the information. Now it's just a case of populating it on the page. Okay. So at this point, let's go ahead and start building out this beautiful article page. So we're going to get to this page, right? But you can see the layout already makes it a hell of a lot easier, because now we just need to focus on this bottom bit. We don't have to care about the rest. So we're going to say article. And in this case, the article section. So the first section is going to be a div. Okay. And then here we're going to have a div inside of that div. Okay. And this is going to have an image component. And the image component is going to look like so. We're going to pop in the URL for as our helper function. And this is complaining because we haven't imported the Next.js image tag. Okay. There we go. Hit a simple refresh. And we need to go ahead and make this now. So basically the outside div, this needs to be a relative. Right? And what we're doing here is a very nice little trick. So we have two images layered up, right? So in this case, we've got the div, and then behind it, we've got a absolutely positioned div exactly behind it. So this is gonna be a relative container. It's gonna be a minimum height of 56. It's gonna be a flex box with flex column by default. On a phone, it's gonna be a flex row. Okay, it's gonna be justifying the space between. Then we've got the div here, which is gonna be an absolute div. This is going to say top 0. Oops, top 0. And then we're going to say width should be 4, height should be 4. Oops, height should be 4. And then I'm going to say the opacity should be 10. Blur the background slightly because we want to get a nice little effect, and give it a padding of 10. All right, let's hit refresh and see what's happened. And now what you can see is very subtle, right? Very, very subtle, right? So that's almost where we want to get to. Okay, but before we can sort of carry on, we're gonna say class name here should be padding x of 10, padding bottom of 28. Section is gonna have space between all the y components of 2. Border, I'm gonna give it the PapaFam border color, and I'm gonna say all the text here should be white because you can see all the text inside of there is white. Okay, now. The minimum height, everything looks okay so far. Now what I want to do is outside of that, so outside of this div, I'm going to have another section, right? And this section is going to have a div inside of it. And inside of that div, I'm going to have a div and a h1 and a p tag, right? Oops, no, not inside that one. They're going to have a p tag here. Right, so again, just don't worry, just take your time. It's completely fine if you get a little bit lost at this point. So the h1 here, we're going to replace with a post title, and the p tag is going to be replaced with a simple sort of a locale string. Okay, so let's go ahead and pop that in right now. This is going to be the post to that date. So let's just go ahead and see what happens there. And right now you can see, I believe we've got a slight little hiccup. So the image here is not the right sizing, but we can fix that in a second, right? So for the section here, I'm going to say padding should be 5. Background is going to be the color of the PapaFam. So let's go ahead and pop that in right now. And width should be 4. Let's hit refresh. For this div, we're going to go ahead. There you go. That's why it wasn't showing. Okay. And then, so that's correct. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. That's right. Okay, so we've got 0 to 4 stack hero. And then here we're going to say flex column. Margin, as we get on a bigger screen, we're going to change to a flex row. Justify between, gap on the y-axis of 5. Right, for the div, we're going to leave that unstyled. The p tag, we're going to leave that unstyled. And then outside of that div, I'm going to have another div. And this div is going to have an image, and it's going to have the author, right, information. So the image and the author information, right? So here we're going to have the image. Okay, that's going to be the author's information. And this right here is going to be flex items center space on the x-axis of 2, right? And then after this image component, we're going to have a div, and we're going to have a h3. And this h3 is just going to simply have the post author.name, right? And underneath that, we're actually going to have the author bio. But the reason why I'm leaving this as a to-do is simply because I've got a to-do extension as well, in case you're wondering, is because I need something called a portable text editor in order to render that, which we're going to come back to in a second. Okay, and if I don't, just remind me, shout at me, right? So width of 64 at this point. Let's go ahead and hit refresh. That's looking already a bit better, right? And now you can see on there, it looks nice. That looks good. That looks pretty nice. Okay, so we're going to say text should be large with a font of bold for the H3. So class name text should be large with a font bold. That's looking already good. Okay. And then underneath this, so where we have our width, outside of there, we are 2 levels down. So 1, 2. After this, we're going to have a div, and this is going to be the one with the description in. So it's going to be a h2. This is going to say post.description. And now inside of this, we're going to have the description itself. So this is going to be italics, padding on the top of 10 to just give it a bit of breathing room. A div, and this one is going to have the categories justified towards the end. Okay, so this one is very simple. We just say post.categories.map for every single category. I want to go ahead and render a div with the category title. Right, so in that case, you could just give a p tag if you really wanted to be syntactically correct. Category, so this one would be category.title. And then this one, you should give it a key, which is going to be the category, .id. There we go. And then we're going to style this. So we're going to say class name. And I've already done the styling here. Again, it's kind of what we did in the initial homepage, but the inverse. Okay, so it's going to be like all of that good stuff. But the div actually here surrounding it, this one should be flex items center. And immediately that should sort of stick it closer. And then we say justify end to push it towards the end. Margin top of auto to push it all the way to the bottom. And SpaceX of 2. And hit a refresh. And just like that, pow. That's automatically looking way nicer. Right? And now if I go back over to, let's say, the Sanity Studio v3. Now you can see in the background, we have this nice, beautiful Sanity Studio v3 background. So I really like this effect because it just gives it a very modern blog feeling, and it gives a very like kind of a cool effect. Right. The only thing that we need to do is underneath the author, there's a little bit of a bio, but that's rich text, and we will handle that afterwards once I get to that point. Okay. So that is overall pretty damn good. So the only step that we actually need to do, the rest of this is completely rendered from a portable text block. You're probably wondering, what is that? Is that really all we have left? And trust me, it's damn powerful what we're about to show you. Okay. So what we now need to do is we're going to use something called React Portable Text. Okay, so I'm gonna pop in something like this. So React Portable Text, and this is a Sanity.io plugin, right? So again, you can go ahead and check it out. This is how they recommend it themselves. So what I recommend we do now is, first things first, we need to add and import it into our application, right? So let's go ahead and do this. And if you're enjoying Sanity right now, let me know with a comment in the description saying, I am going to try out Sanity v3. First link in the description as well. Let me know if you're watching right now, and I kind of wake everyone up, right? Thank you so much, Pat Peacher. She says, I highly recommend Zero to Full Stack. Here the course is rich and many real-world use cases and well explanations from beginner to advanced level. Right? Tess says, no matter how long this build takes, your dedication keeps me super pumped. That's what I'm talking about, dude. That's what I love to see. Right? So in this case, we're going to install React Portable Text into our application. Right? Next up, we're going to go ahead and pop in the following. So I need to go up into the top, import portable text into my application. Okay. And what I am going to do now is I need to actually create something called a rich text components file. I'll show you why we're going to do that. Okay. So underneath the section over here, so just below the bottom, what we want to do is I want to have it so that, let's pull up my code. Yeah. So under here, right, I basically want to take the information from the body. So in this case, everything else is rendering out except for the body. So this stuff right here, I want to take this. And as you can see, rich text editors have this ability to say what a H1 is, H2, what a link is. If you want an image, we can go ahead and pop in an image. And then what we have to do as developers is provide something which will go ahead. What we need to then do is go ahead and say, when you get an H1, you should do this. When you get an H2, you should do this, and so forth. So this is how we do that. Okay, so we open up our code, we go ahead, and then I want to quickly point this one out as well. Someone just said, what's Sunny's degree? So yes, I do have a degree and I have a master's degree, but that is not the reason why I am a developer at this level. I'm self-taught, most of it, honestly. And that's why we have a course, because I'm self-taught. And that I pause it for this one reason. It's not fundamentally necessary anymore, right? Self-taught devs, people in my students in my course, kill it, absolutely kill it without a degree, right? Because you just need a mentor, and you need the right content and resources. That's it. It's free on YouTube. If you want to get a shortcut, 0 to Full Stack Hero, that's it. Doesn't matter about what degree you have and all that kind of stuff. But yes, I do have a master's degree. First class. Just saying. I had to throw it in. The thing was painful as hell to get it, right? But yeah, it's not what defined me today. But yes, if you want to know, I do have that. Okay, post.body. Okay, and now in this case, we render out the portable text, and then you see here, we basically pass in the value. So this is cool, I guess. But the problem is that I need it like that, right? So the way that this actually comes into the way that this actually gets returned is if I was to go ahead and show you a query right now. So let's go ahead and show a query. You can see that the block comes back. Mr. Frank, $5 donation, thank you. Goes, what the hell? I'm not gonna say it, but Sonny has a PhD in React. That's what I'm telling you, dude. Honestly, it's all about practical experience. But Frank, OG, man. So here you can see we have a block. So where is my block text? So if we go into the body, yeah, here. So you see here, right? We have like a 0, 1, 2, 3. These are known. This is what are known as block text. And inside you've got certain children, and this can have like a span. So our famous build, blah blah blah. And all we need to do is we need to create a function which can basically take that and interpret. If it's a H1, show it this way. If it's H2, show it this way, and so forth, right? So I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to turn this into this, right? And again, you can. I'm going to show you how to do it to a certain level. You can then take that, run with it, and build whatever the hell you want to build. Okay. So I'm just telling you straight up, right? So in this case, this takes something called components. Okay. So components equals. Now I'm going to create something called rich text components. So a file called rich text components. So I'm going to go into my components, create rich text components.tsx. Okay. And now inside of a rich text components, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the following. So import the following helper functions. And my URL library is actually incorrect here. I believe the one that I'm looking for is outside. Is it outside again? Yeah, there you go. So, oops. So it's not that one, it's underneath again. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna get in my library, and then we're gonna basically go ahead and export something in the following shape, okay? So bear with me and I'll pop it in, right? In fact, what I might do here is this is actually completely available on the documentation, rather than me kind of re-explaining the same thing again. So if you can see here, we've got serializers, right? So instead of this, now what we're doing is, so this is React portable text. I think I used a slightly different one. I used portable text React, I believe. So let's go back to my code page, portable text React. Yeah, slightly different one I used. But you can honestly use that one that I just showed you, or you can use portable text React, right? So components, here you are. And then if you see customized components, this is basically where I got the boilerplate code for, right? So I'm going to show you my example. So I'm going to copy in the bulk of it, and then someone goes, I like his accent but not his fake. I like his teaching but not his fake accent. I really don't know what to tell you. If I was faking being British this entire time, kudos to me, that deserves a like. But otherwise, yeah, you do you. Sanity is very generous with their free plan. They're absolutely incredible. I love that team. They're incredible. They're honestly really cool to work with. Jay's too funny. All right. So in this case, I'm going to carry on. I'm getting off topic. So in this case, we're going to go back to rich text component, and I'm going to go ahead and say export const rich text components equals, and oh, Jay's too harsh. But if you break the rules, Jay's gonna kick you out. All right, so at this point we've got types, and then I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in. So I'm gonna run you through it, so don't freak out. Okay, so you can literally feel free to. I'm gonna scroll through the code a bit, and you can go ahead and feel free to pause it, see what yourself, like what's happening. But I will explain every single point here. So firstly, we have types. Now, types is basically if we get to go ahead and see something like an image, what should we do, right? So in this case, the value comes back when we have an image. In this case, our image value would include the sanity reference to an image, right? So in that case, we could do this previous logic, which was URL4, and then transfer it to a URL. So every time we see an image, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this fill logic with a div, and it's going to be a height of 96, a width of 4. Okay, so every single time I'm going to customize my image. So every time it sees an image in that rich text body, it will render out this way. Next up, we have lists, bullet lists or numbered lists. If it's a bulleted list, we're going to have an unordered list. And then we're going to go ahead and have a margin left, padding Y, list disk, which allows us to have the little dot. And then we have space Y. And then for a numbered list, we've got a list decimal, okay, with an ordered list syntax tag. The next one is the block. This one's a bit more important. We've got the H1, H2, H3, H4. The children are rendered out as render props. And then we have text 5XL, text 4XL, 3XL, 2XL as we progress down from H1 to H4. Each one is font bold, each one is padding Y of 10. Padding Y of 10 is quite important here because the line breaks aren't picked up. The line breaks are not picked up. There is a way to do it. I couldn't for the life of me find out yesterday, so I will find out. But otherwise, for now, padding Y of 10 on the headings was also a great option. Okay, and block quote is another one that I really like because if you've got a quote inside of your rich text, for example, like I do in many cases, like here, for example, it's really nice, right? So you can have a block quote as well. Then we've got the marks. Marks is more for like emphasis, italics, link. So in this case, whenever we have a link, it counts as something called a mark. And in this case, we can go ahead and say with the render props of children and value, if the value starts with /, then we're going to go ahead and append this over. We're going to go ahead and pass in this object, right? So in this case, it's absolutely fundamental. I just added an extra last minute. But in this case, we've got the link tag itself, which is a Next.js link tag. And then it will go ahead and allow us to basically convert the rich body link tag into a presentable link tag. And what I've done here is added an underline with a decoration of the PapaFam color. And when you hover over it, it goes into a black color. Okay. So now if I go ahead and save this, all right, what we're going to see is if I go back into my page.tsx and I go down to here and I basically import my rich text components, this now acts as a serializer. So it takes that massive amount of text that we saw in earlier. So it was just like a plain text blob. So it takes this and it will literally go ahead and change this now into it as we see fit. So as you can see, look at that. That looks beautiful, right? So then you can see my links are clickable. So I can click this and it will take me straight to Sanity.io, right? So look at that. Sanity, and also, by the way, if you're wondering and you want to read more, feel free to check out Sanity's homepage. They've literally got it at the top, and that's where the link to the product hunt is. Really, honestly, help them push to that 500 or top spot, right? Because they really do deserve it after doing this amount of work. Like this is really probably the best CMS that I've actually messed around with. So it's honestly, it's a game changer. I'm going to be adding it to my own backends for a lot of things. Okay. So in this case, and kudos to the Sanity team for that. That's absolutely incredible. Right. So at this point, if I now go into, for example, let's change it up to go to the University of Code. As you can see now, bam, my block quote gets rendered out, my H1 gets rendered out, my list got rendered out, my H1, and look, my images got rendered out. And these are examples of the coding problems that you get daily at the University of Code. And then look at that, just absolutely mad. But this is crazy. Like that work, look at that, that works on a phone. That just works perfectly. Like, look at that, that's a full blog, guys. And that's rendered out on, like, you've got the whole backend at /studio, which once we deploy is available online and is protected with authentication, which is managed, and you can add as many members as you want through Sanity's backend. Like what the hell? This is so cool, right? So now to make things even more better, I'm going to take it a step further. Because yes, we like fast websites, but I want it to be blazing fast. I want it to be so fast that you don't have to wait, right? So in that case, now this is where Next.js 13 comes in, right? So Next.js 13, as we've got pages which we can predict beforehand. What I mean by that is I can simply run a query to go ahead and check all of the slugs that exist inside of Next.js, and then I can go ahead and pre-populate those pages at build time. And then what I can say to Next.js is, every 60 seconds or even 10 seconds or, you know, every 5 hours, whatever you want to do, I can go ahead and tell it that you need to go ahead and revalidate that static page, which is super fast for users to go ahead and receive because there's no JavaScript. It just goes bam and it just loads up. I can go ahead and revalidate that every 60 seconds based on users' visits. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And it's so powerful that I absolutely love it, right? So in this case, we are at the slug, right? So what we can do here is we need to do 2 steps. If I was to go ahead and build this right now, what we will do is it will actually go ahead and build out something called a static page. So let's go ahead and just try this out. I'm going to show you right now. So if I do yarn build, okay, what I want to emphasize here, guys, is this is creating a production build of the app. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my actual application here. Okay. Now, at this point, what this is doing, if I try to run my app, is dead. Okay. So this is creating a production build of the app. The issue is that this will go ahead and do it, but it will pre-build all of the pages like once. And I'll show you that right now. In fact, I don't think it will. I think it will actually, it will server render all the pages. So it'll be kind of slow right now. Right. So in this case, let's just let that do its thing. And then I'll show you how we can statically generate them and then how we can even do something even better. Okay. So let's check this out. So generating static pages. So you can see it generated 3 pages and it said that any of the post pages asked something called server side rendered pages. Now this is okay. It's not as fast as it could be though. So if I type in yarn start, this starts up from my build, my production build that I just built now. It will start that version. So notice the speed of this, right? I'm going to show you. Pretty quick. If I go into 0 to full stack hero, it's fast, but there's still a little delay. I know I'm being picky, but there's still a tiny delay. Now the reason why you're not noticing that delay is because it's prefetching. Right, so that when we use the Next.js link tag, it's prefetching these pages, which means it feels instant, right? But what we can't avoid is every time, what we can't seem to forget, every time I do that, it re-queries Sanity's database, which can actually impact our quota quite bad. So I want to do this at build time and create static pages, and that way I don't kill my Sanity query limits. So let's go ahead and do that firstly. Well, now we have this beautiful function called export async function GenerateStaticParams. It's a keyword. This replaces the ISR or the old techniques that we used to know about. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a query, which is going to go ahead and query all the posts, but it's only going to give me back the slugs. Right. So all I care about is the slugs. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and query the backend. And I'm going to basically push that to post, even though, yes, it doesn't have everything else. It just has the slug. It's fine for now. I'm just going to say it's a post. Okay. And then what I need to do is I simply have to return a mapping of all of the possible slugs. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to map through, and I'm going to say for every single item that comes back, I'm going to map through and basically just get the current, which means that all the slugs. So if it's like, for example, this slug is /post/ the University of Code. So I'm just going to get an array of all of these, the University of Code, Sanity v3, Spotify clone, all the different slugs that exist in my CMS. Then I'm going to go ahead and return the slug roots dot map. And basically here we say for every single slug, I'm going to return an object. So notice how I done parentheses with an object inside, and then I basically say slug. Now this first key needs to represent this. So if that's ID, this has to be ID. The second value is going to be the value here. So in this case, if it was ID slug, then it'll be slug, but in this case, they're both called slug, so we can shorthand it. Now, just by adding that in, what we now have is the ability to create static pages. So we're now a level up, but I'm going to show you a problem with this as well. So if I do yarn build, this is super important. I promise you this is probably one of the most valuable lessons with regards to Next.js 13, the whole static rendering stuff. This is your key moment to understand what's going on. When I build now, it now knows how to find which pages to build at pre-build as static pages at build time. Now, notice how it's building 13 pages. And look at this, guys. It pre-built post Spotify clone, pre-built test, pre-built Uber clone, and 7 more paths. That means that it pre-built 10 pages. 10 pages, if you remember from the beginning, is how many I have inside of my posts. As you can see, there are 10 pages. So now it knows how to pre-build those pages. So if I go ahead and do, and if you see here, it's now changed the image to a white dot for the post pages. That means that it's a static generated page, right? So now if I do yarn start from my apps, this will start the production build. Let's go back to the home page now. Now this is blazing fast, absolutely blazing fast. So if I go ahead 0 to full stack, bam, there was no delay there, right? If I go to Next.js, bam, it's there. Super quick. If I go to University of Code, bam. Like that's fast. That's absolutely quick because now it's just a static page. There's no JavaScript. So it doesn't even have to touch Sanity's backend anymore. The problem now that we have is the issue of what if I update my Sanity CMS backend data. So let's imagine I update the University of Code blog. So let's go to my studio right now. I'm going to open up the studio, and remember this is I'm not doing yarn dev. If I do yarn dev, it's going to server render every time. So you have to build and then do yarn start to test this out, right? So this is an important lesson for everyone, right? But if I don't do this, now what you're going to see, because remember I'm in yarn start right now. This is a production build, not a developer build. So now it won't do like server side rendering, so it won't refresh. So if I go into the University of Code now, and again I explain all of this stuff inside the Zero to Full Stack Hero in such depth that you understand to such a level. So don't stress if you can't understand. Just join us at Zero to Full Stack Hero. John Paul says don't delete this video. I definitely will not. Okay, so at this point now, if I was to go ahead and say the University of Code, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, right? So now I should have loads of exclamation marks after this. If I publish it, okay? Or let's in fact do the University of Code UOC, okay? And I want to go ahead and publish that change now, okay? So in this case, if I was to go ahead and do it, you see it's unpublished right now. So I did publish it actually. Yeah, I did publish it, okay? So it says the UOC right now. So if I was to refresh and we go here, it will say the UOC. So if I did a yarn dev build, you would see the latest one. But the problem is, what about when it's in production, right? Once it's released, I don't want to have to keep deploying just to update my CMS backend. So if I refresh now, look, I don't see UOC. Yeah. What I now need to do is I have to do a redeployment. So I have to do yarn build. And then what this does is it builds the pages by checking out what contents it needs to build. And then it's going to get the UOC content, this new one. Then I can do serve and I can do yarn start. Then it will show it, right? Which is, again, it's a lot of work, right? And plus, who wants to do that once we actually push it to deployment? Nobody wants to do that, right? So now I've built the page. If I do yarn start, you'll see that we get the better page now. Look, if I do, look, you'll see, bam, right? Because it does it at build time. But what if I told you that there was a way of adding one line of code and it basically just did all of this for us, which means that every 60 seconds, every 2 seconds, if I wanted, every 5 hours, one line of code can make it so that way every 30 seconds, 20 seconds, it will just rebuild that page in the background, and then all the users will get served that cache page. But it will always be up to date within 20 seconds, within a minute, within 2 minutes, which I think is forgivable. Okay. What if I told you there's a way of doing that? Well, there is. There's a really nice way of doing that. And it's absolutely game changer, right? And it's so easy to do. All you have to do is add in this line of code. And it's a reserved keyword, export const revalidate, right? It's the easiest way. They've changed all the confusing ISR stuff in Next.js to now this simple, effective strategy. And you can do revalidate equals 60. And in this case, just to stress the test out, I'm going to do 30. Right, so I'm going to say revalidate this page every 30 seconds, right? I'm just adding a comment there so you understand what's going on. Now, if I do this build, yeah, you'll probably be a little confused. Well, I'll show you why, right? But now what we'll do is, this is game changer. I'm telling you, this is my favorite thing about Next.js, right? Is it gets the best of caching and server-side rendering, because what happens is after 20 seconds, it server-side renders a new page and then caches it, and then everyone that comes in within that 20-30 second gap gets the cached version. So it's so fast, and you're not killing your quota with Sanity. But so even if you get 1 million users, it's just serving the cached version, and then after 20 seconds, it server-side renders another one. So you're not scaling at 1 million Sanity requests if you have 1 million users, right? So this is a game changer, right? So now at this point, you can see it's still got a white label, which is static site generated. So you're probably wondering, did it actually work? Did it? Well, let's test it out for ourselves, right? So if I open up this and I do a refresh now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get rid of the ULC, and I'm going to hit publish, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh. And as you can see, it published, but it hasn't yet refreshed. So remember, we said 30 seconds. So after 30 seconds or so, I should come back to this page, which again is a production build, and it should be completely changed. So we shouldn't see UOC there anymore. So now let's give this a try. Let's go ahead and walk around our app. Has it been 30 seconds yet? I don't know. Has it been 30 seconds yet? Let's go to the University of Code, and bam, it rebuilt it in the background, and that worked, right? And I'm gonna say this actually works. Okay, and I'm gonna hit publish. And now I'm going to walk around my app. So imagine like loads of users are coming around your app, reading your articles. Okay, cool. You made a really important change that you wanted to go ahead and see in action. Okay. So in this case, like, you know, I'll go to Sanity Studio. Okay, this is great. You know, I'm going over here, messing around on my app. Let's go ahead and check that app. Let's go ahead and check that again. University of Code hasn't updated yet. Oh, bam, refreshed. Bam, it worked. This actually works. All right. Go over here, hit a refresh. Go over here, University of Code. Bam, this actually works. Right? And just like that, guys, it's as simple as that. Now you can see we've got cached static pages which get revalidated within the time period that we want. Right? And if I go ahead and refresh now, you can see that the final change is going to go into effect. And just like that, it works. Right? So really, honestly, just so powerful. Right? And you probably would want to do this as well for your homepage. So don't forget the homepage as well. So I would probably also recommend that you had this for the home page here as well. So where you have for your home page, because you're doing a await call here, this is being statically generated. So you don't really want to forget about this one. So you probably want to add a revalidate period here as well. Okay. And now your home page will also get that update. As you can see here, it wasn't updating before, but now if I was to refresh this page, like the University of Code, bam, works. Okay, so this is absolute game changer of a level of tech. We've got Next.js server-side rendering. Well, we've got Next.js server components. We've got client components when they're needed. We have statically generated data, which gets revalidated whenever we say it needs to get revalidated, which means we're not exhausting our sanity quota. And then we've got this amazing sanity backend, which allows us to update all the information. And our Next.js just plays along with it, right? And we can have the best of both worlds. We even have the entire Sanity Studio embedded on the same Next.js 13 website. Like, what the hell is happening to tech these days? This is so powerful, right? So this is like an unheard of, right? So at this point, we have our blog down. So I guess the only thing that we kind of have to do now is deploy this thing, right? So what I'm going to do now is show you how to deploy this to the Devosphere, right? Mr. Frank, that's a good question. Please send that in Slack. He says, is there a way to make a sitemap for a statically generated Sanity page for SEO? I will have to check on that. I'll have to check on that, right? But let's go ahead and cut this right now. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and say yarn. I think there is though. I remember someone asking me that before, right? So now we're going to go ahead and do Vercel. Okay, so at this point, if you type in Vercel and it says Vercel command not found, you probably need to go ahead and do an npm install -g Vercel to install this globally. I've already done this. So now if I type in Vercel, I'm going to deploy it from my command line. Now at this point, if you're not logged in, it will go ahead and prompt you to log in. Okay, so now all you need to do is go ahead and hit Y for entering. Yeah, so you're going to deploy from this URL. I am already logged in and I have one account, which is Sunny Sanga. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Link to existing project? Nope. I'm going to hit enter for no. What's your project name? Let's go ahead with that one as the default. Okay, and which code is your project, your code located? Yes, that's fine. Setting up the project and it's uploading it. Now, this will fail. Okay, I'm telling you right now, this will fail because my environment variables have not been set. But I will show you how we can do it. This is my kind of a quick way of doing it, okay? So let's go ahead and click, want to modify these settings. Let's click no, enter, and let's deploy it, okay? So at this point, if I click on inspect, right, it gives me a link. So this will take me to my Vercel URL. Now what I can show you is we can go over to this bit right here, go over to settings, go to environment variables, and there is a whole video I've launched about how you can set these environment variables beforehand in the Vercel CLI. Check that video out, Jay. Link it afterwards in the video and in the description as well. Not in the description, in the chat right now. But basically how you can deploy from any CLI. And then check this out. So this is actually the simplest way of deployment. So right now, while that's happening, you can go over to your code, simply go into your environment file, yeah, copy it. Literally copy that, go back over, and there's many ways you can actually do this. You can have integration as well. And I'm going to go here and paste. And look at that, you get this nice paste. Go ahead and click save. Okay, now we've got our environment variables up and running. Wait until the one that we had running fails, because it will fail. This will literally fail because it will say, hang on, you don't have a Next Sanity project ID, you don't have this, you don't have that. So let this do its thing. We're almost there, almost there. Right, I'm going to have to add something to a cause whitelist as well. Now once this is done, we can actually check on the build status. We can go ahead and say deployments. You see this is building. This will fail. I'm telling you, it will fail because we can cancel this build. Let's just cancel that. And then we can go here and we can do Vercel again. So now I've uploaded the environment variables. We can even run Vercel environment pull. So Vercel env pull, and it will go ahead and do that. Now you can see it goes ahead and inspects. And this one should have the environment variables in place. So now you can see it goes ahead and it will attempt to build just like we did previously, right? It will do Vercel build, which will attempt to do basically what I did before with yarn build, but with the environment variables located on their side. So in this case, this will go ahead and do that. And then while that's happening, I'm going to show you what we would actually need to do next. So while that's happening, if we go to sanity.io.manage /manage, we're going to have to actually add in a cause extra part here. So this is the one that I've done. I accidentally didn't use the boosted plan on my own thing. So in this case here, for example, I'll show you. So you should see boosted free. This is when you use coupon code Sunny. Then you want to go to access, right? API, sorry. And then here, this is where you want to add it. So whatever URL that you end up deploying to, you need to add it as a cause origin. But I'll show you a really easy way of doing this, right? So now, if we were to go back to my deployment, let's go down here. Oh, project ID. Okay, so this hasn't imported it. So in this case, the project ID hasn't been pulled in. So let's have a look why that hasn't been pulled in. Next Sanity project. Let's go ahead and see. Yeah, so probably because it hasn't actually set the environment variable as I wanted it to. So in this case, to debug it, very easy. You can just go ahead and do the following. You can cancel this all, do Vercel environment pull. Okay, and then this will pull in your environment files. All right, so it's downloading your environment files. And let's go ahead and see if we see .env. And now you can see all the environment files that are up online, right? So this is what we actually wanted. I believe this happened because it wasn't finished building. So now if I was to check it, deployments. So we have to wait until this one completely dies, right? Because otherwise it won't do it. I think it's doing it now. Yeah, so this is the one. This is the correct one. So I was on the wrong one, okay? So in this case, look at that. It created the pages, built them out. You don't have to do Vercel env pull, but I was just trying to show you how it works. Okay, and then it says ready. Nice. Okay, so if I click on this URL, or I click on this, now you'll see it will give me a URL. Okay, so firstly, wham, it worked, right? And then let's go here. Let's go to 0 to full stack hero. Click it, and as you can see, bam, the page is loaded up, and we can go on to another page. Let's go to like the Sanity Studio. Bam, we can see our Sanity Studio blog loaded up. Let's try the University of Code. Again, you can join us at the University of Code. Make sure you do. All links are in the description, right? So in this case, that loads up perfectly, right? So everything works, right? But let's try out the studio. So if I go to /studio, and in fact, I've got a nicer URL than this. Use this one. So they give you a bunch of different URLs. Try and use the nicer one, right? So, or your custom one that you map. So in this case, studio /studio. And let's give this a try. And remember, smash the thumbs up, people. Smash the thumbs up button if this works. So in this case, this will come up with an error. Wait for it. This. To access your content, you need to add the following URL as a cause origin to your Sanity project. So in this case, we are the owner. So I'm going to authenticate this and say, okay, let's do that. It takes us over to Sanity. We simply add the cause origin. It will then take us back, and now we are approved. I've logged in, which means it allowed it to work. And as you can see, guys, this is literally live on the same website. I have my entire Papa Fam content studio hosted on the website. That is absolutely game changer. That's so clean. That's so nice. We have an embedded content studio, all this incredibly powerful functionality, previewing, vision, where we can do our own GROQ queries, all from the power of our phone anywhere in the world once we've deployed it. That's game changer. If I change any of the content, I can rest assured knowing that my pages will be revalidated. My homepage will be revalidated. The post page itself will be revalidated because of Next.js's revalidate function. It's incredibly, incredibly powerful. So time to go ahead and wrap this build up the way that we know how to. The only way that we're going to go ahead and do this is the correct way, right? So I'm going to show you a quick run through of everything that we did today. And as always, guys, smash this thumbs up because honestly, this is like such a powerful build that we were able to accomplish today. Let's have a look at what we did today. We had the incredible Next.js 13 Sanity blog right? We went ahead and built out a fully responsive website, right? So completely responsive using Sanity's V3, which came with, remember, full TypeScript support, the embedded ability to have a studio inside of our own app, right? All of this crazy power. Remember, we've got global search, we've got all the new workspace features, so much stuff that they've added. I couldn't contain it in one video, right? And then we combine that with the power of Next.js 13. So you can go ahead and check out, and then after it was working, now it's just so fast, it's incredible. Everything works perfectly, everything works the way that we want it to. We even have the preview mode. Preview mode works a charm. If I was to go to /API/preview, we even get the preview mode live. Right, so all of this is working exactly the way that we wanted it. We can then go ahead and view our preview data in real time from the backend. So no matter what, if I'm doing it from the live backend or if I'm doing it from the studio deployment backend, it completely doesn't matter, from the localhost backend or from the one that we see. But either way, if I was to change it even right now from here, we will see this change in real time. Let's give it a try right now live. The University of Code 123. Bam. This is live, guys. That's live on the internet right now, streaming it across like that. You can literally go to that URL and it'll work. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. Thank you, Pat Peacher. Thank you, Oliver Anderson. Thank you, Mr. Frank. All of you and everyone else who's been watching today. Absolutely incredible build. I hope you enjoy this one. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as I mentioned before, guys, if you want to know more about all of this stuff, you want to go in depth to a whole nother level, then you know where to go. Right? We've built an entire course and community around this. It's called Zero to Full Stack Hero. This is where we take you from zero skill set all the way up to becoming a badass developer and absolutely crushing it, right? So it really, and we've learned how to do that in a way because we've taught so many students now to such successful levels, right? So not only have we got the Zero to Full Stack Hero community, the course with over 750 members, tons of content, weekly coaching calls, all that amazing stuff, right? Frank himself is on the landing page, right? All of this incredible stuff. We also now have the University of Code, which is even more, because I didn't think it was enough, right? Every day we send you coding challenges. Every single day I will send you coding challenges in the form of a coding problem, right? So it'll be a coding problem that's like a little brain teaser, and then you have to provide a solution. And then every day, the next day, you're going to go ahead and get the solution in your inbox every single day of the week. Every day. That's it. That's what our commitment to you is at the Papa Fam. We want to introduce as many developers into the world as possible, and it is because of communities like the Papa Fam and amazing communities and companies like the Sanity Studio, the Sanity team, that the developer space is growing to whole new heights, which allow us to do incredible apps and builds like the one that you saw today. So without further ado, guys, if you enjoyed this video, smash that thumbs up button. And as always, guys, this is your boy Papa React, and I will see you in the next one. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe, turn on your bell notifications. I've got so much content coming. That's it. Papa Fam is here to stay. We're going to hit bigger and newer heights, and thank you everyone for being a massive supporter in the year 2022. I'm going to see you throughout this entire rest of the year and throughout the next year and beyond. We're never quitting. So I'll see you in the next one. Peace.